feels wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through color glass, time rolls on enough to let me move on past, but every little now and then it creeps on back to shade my smile.
Vestiges After Dark is a philosophical speculation program sponsored by the Holy Nicolayan Catholic Church, an independent Catholic church inspired by the diversity of early Christianity and in communion with the Old Catholic Church. Presiding Bishop Brian Willett presents perspectives on esotericism, metaphysics, philosophy, psychology, paranormal research, theology, spirituality, religion, and Catholicism. We are not affiliated with the Church of Rome. Our discussions of Catholicism are broader than, and distinct from, the Church of Rome. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individual participants.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this May 19th, 2026. We live in the crazy planet Earth. That's why I say that every week. And nowhere is that more noticeable than in how we interact with each other, particularly with the divisiveness that this world insists on maintaining. With new guest Jeramy Gordon, we are going to discuss how to correct this within ourselves. That's tonight on Vestiges After Dark. Well, hello, everybody. Once again, I'm your host, Bishop Brian Willett, with my co-host, Jamie Wolf.
Good evening, all.
And, we are ready tonight with a really good show, I think. I really am looking forward to this topic because it's something that is very serious, something that is, I think, extremely important, and one that really needs to start getting addressed in more channels than just this one. Certainly this show has been a pioneer in terms of talking about ending divisiveness. It's what we are all about here. It's what this church really was established upon. And this show is a facilitation of that teaching. But, it needs to be much broader than this show, and it needs to be outside of just the unique audience that this show attracts. It needs to be out there in mass consciousness. And that's a place where this show will probably never go due to its nature. But this is a topic that doesn't have that luxury. So that will be coming up on hours 2 and 3, and I'm very much looking forward to having this discussion with our new guests. But every week this program, it gets on my nerves, and so it is out of sync. But I think I'm back on sync. So let me know if there's any visual or audio discrepancy. I think we've fixed it, but it's so easy to just push one thing and it all goes wonky on you. And it doesn't help that the camera placement has to be somewhat partially in front of a critical point on my screen. So it blocks out some of the controls that I need to see. And so far, I haven't been able to figure out a placement for it outside of getting a much larger video screen, which I think might just have to happen. I might have to just invest in one that's about 3 times the size of this one. And maybe donate this one to one of the bedrooms at the retreat house. I think I might have to do that.
The retreat house would appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll have to do, is just switch them out. Get a bigger one for here, and then switch this one out for in there. But anyway, we will work on that, and hopefully by next season I'll have a flawless show. Wouldn't that be nice? Having a flawless show. Wouldn't that be great? we're not gonna try to jinx that one, right? Joining us from Australia, we have the very ready to go Father Chris Yates tonight. How you doing tonight, Father?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I went to a concert last night, so I might be a bit bleary-eyed.
Okay.
A band called Split Ends, who were the prequel to Crowded House, who you may have heard of.
Oh yes, I know Crowded House.
Yeah, all right. Well,
so yeah, it was very good. It wasn't a wild night. It's just that I'm old now, so going out at all makes me tired the next day.
Oh, I understand that.
I can't even talk the next day.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just like I'm a person that subsists on 4 hours of sleep a night. So it's the fact that at almost 53 years old, I can do that is quite a remarkable thing, although not always coherently. My performance
I can
does
do
degrade
it, but
through the night.
I'll be recovering for 3 days.
Well, for me, it's also partly that I've not made anything of this on this show, but my first chosen career path was to be a rock star. So
you and everybody else. I mean,
so
come on.
I play piano and guitar and sing and all of that. I mean, in church, by the way, I prefer Gregorian chant, as you know,
Yes.
and good hymns from the New English Hymnal. So never the twain shall meet. But it's great. And then when you go and watch, sort of the Split Ends were big in the 80s. You go and watch a band like that, and you think they're a bit older than me. They're still going. There's still hope. You know, it can still be my time.
There you go. Hey, you never know. You never know. It could find you.
Again.
Maybe in a parallel universe, you're rocking it out at arenas everywhere.
I mean, I didn't think I'd be like a bishop, all these years after all the crazy things that I tried in my younger days. So, I mean, you never know where God's going to lead you next.
It's true.
It's crazy sometimes. It really is. Joining us.
It's good to kind of like, I like that sort of, I mean, you might have this crazy background, and I know, bits about loads of things, and I think I don't regret any of that. I think if I'd been, to be a successful musician, you've got to be very talented, very lucky, and you've got to do like the one thing all the time and put all your chips in on, onto that.
I'd say talent is probably the least important thing.
Well,
and
it
is still important, but I'd say it is the least important thing
now.
to becoming successful in music.
Yeah,
there's plenty of very talented musicians that will never even be known by anybody because they're just not lucky enough, or they don't know the right people, or whatever.
And now we know that, right? Because you go to some karaoke evening, and there's people that sing on there, and you think they've got amazing voices. You'll never have heard of them. They're probably working in a supermarket.
Yeah.
My wife and I used to
but,
love the show America's Got Talent. We used to watch it every season. We watched it right back to the early days of Jerry Springer when he hosted it. And I can tell you, I stopped watching it because it would piss me off too much. There would be these extremely talented people that would lose because there was obviously some behind the scenes politics or something that the producers wanted to promote. And I mean, the show was fixed. There's no question about it in my mind.
I mean, the producers see dollar signs when it comes to.
Oh yeah,
I'll take you all the way back to.
Who can dance a bit.
Oh yeah.
I'll take you all the way back to Star Search, boys.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Ed McMahon.
I remember Ed McMahon. Yeah,
it was still political even back then.
He's got $1 million to give you.
Yeah.
Joining us from Tennessee, we have April Narad with us. How you doing tonight, April?
I'm doing pretty good. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger. And then, so I became a counselor. But once I watched Star Trek The Next Generation, I still have hope to get into space because of Deanna Troi.
Well, I have to say, there's probably never a better time where that could still happen because, I mean, space exploration is becoming more and more accessible. Right now, it's a playground for only the super wealthy, but I mean, who knows what it could be like when the aliens land, right?
Deanna Troi represents the priesthood as well, because of course, TNG is notoriously godless. It's like
I would say it's notorious. I don't think it's entirely godless. I mean, it's
well, you got Q.
You got well, yeah, that's a different kind of thing. There's a few episodes of the Next Generation that definitely get into a faith dynamic.
Deep Space Nine isn't. Deep Space Nine has the
very spiritual,
but it's very rationally explained. The prophets and all.
Well, are they aliens? Are they prophets? Yeah, I mean, there's that component, but there's definitely some philosophical things.
Priest.
I think
Troi is the ship's chaplain.
Yeah, you could say that's very true. Yeah, I would say that's very true. And she does definitely take more of a, I guess, out of all of the characters on that show, she's probably the most spiritual of them. I mean, they're scientists. I mean, it's a ship of scientists.
There was Guinan too.
Guinan's very spiritual. Yeah, that's true.
True. Yeah, she plays a priestly role in it.
Unfortunately, the real actor is anything but. I definitely liked her character.
Whereas the actress that plays Troi is all right.
Yeah, she seems to be. Yeah, well, she's
not nuts.
Yeah, no, she's not. She's not completely crazy. I mean, I liked Whoopi Goldberg until she went on The View, and then she just lost her mind.
Yeah,
with the rest of them.
Something happened to Whoopi.
Yeah. I mean, I'll always appreciate her art. I don't need to like the actor to enjoy their characters. I definitely don't.
Loved her movies. Her politics are like, what on earth?
I'm not sure she even knows. I think she just gets paid to give the talking points and does it for the money. That's my guess.
Extremely disappointed in her.
She wasn't like that in the 80s.
No, she was not.
Oh, well, it's all the way it is.
But you said something really important there, Bishop.
Yeah.
That,
Did I?
Yeah. Well, I suspect we're going to talk about this on today's show. Is that there is no reason to dislike the art someone produces just because you don't like their politics. I mean, politics is becoming everybody's personal religion, and we got to get away from that.
Oh my God, isn't that the truth? Yeah. I mean, first
something
it was
can be wrong and also brilliant.
You have religion, and then you have science, and then now it's politics is the new religion.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we're waiting for musicians and actors if I was waiting for them to share my political outlook, then there'd be very, very few actors that you could choose from to film something with.
Yeah.
It's an unnecessary restriction. Like conservative types don't tend towards creativity. That's what lefty types do, and that's why we need them, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we need each other.
We do. Yeah. And I think that maybe we'll be able to get into some of that tonight. Sorry for the screen that popped up there. I was trying to fix the audio and it ended up coming up on the wrong monitor. Once again, like I said, this whole get up drives me nuts. I mean, one of these days I'm just going to revamp this whole studio with the right kind of equipment to get rid of some of the little bits. You got to remember, for those of you who might be new to Vestiges After Dark, this show started as just a basic audio podcast. I was just using a USB microphone stuck into my computer. And, this is just something that we did. on occasion. It wasn't on a schedule. It wasn't anything fancy. And even the music was, there was a time where it was just the same songs being played over and over again. And it was just to create a break so that, I could go refill my drink or go to the bathroom or something.
All nostalgic now.
Yeah. I mean, and then over time, the audience started to demand, well, how about you do a video so we can see you while you're doing this? And then, so it's like that took a lot of figuring out because, again, I'm not skilled in this. I didn't go and become a podcaster because I
was harassing you over it as well.
Oh, really? Did you? Were you on?
Yeah.
Were you on? Oh, I don't remember. Okay, well, everybody wanted it, so we made this happen, and now it's grown. Now, in order to get to the next level, that you're seeing some of these podcasters with these nice real studios, and it's like they're all like sitting down in these nice big chairs and having a cigar and everything else. In order to do that, we could do that. I definitely have the space.
I am definitely up for outside cigar time.
I definitely have the space in my house to create a very nice studio setup like that. But then we're going to need an engineer to like control.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, to be able to control the cameras and everything. So I don't have to think about that, and I can just sit there and talk. And there's a way we could do it. We could like have two big chairs, you and I, Jamie, and then we could have a big screen behind us where we talk to our guests and our, everybody else, the panel and everyone else that comes on the show. So, I mean, it's something we could do down the road, but maybe when Levi's more up to the task, he can do the engineering. I'm sure he could.
That boy could do it now.
I think he probably could. I don't know if he wants to, because I think he likes watching it upstairs.
He needs to want to.
But, maybe down the road. We'll work on that.
Heathcliff to do it.
Heathcliff definitely would do it.
If he had opposable thumbs, he probably would.
Well, he's got that tail. It's pretty strong.
Yeah. Look at that tail.
All right. What's our first question from the ether tonight, April?
First question is, I have been pondering the concept of superstitions. I'm curious, could a superstition turn into a sort of egregore if enough people believe in it? From a metaphysical perspective, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so yes, that is actually the easiest way for an egregore to be created, or a thought form, is usually out of trauma. Trauma is the easiest way. Now, there's obviously occult ways to create a egregore or a thought form, and that's more for skilled practitioners of the occult. It takes a lot of years of dedication and skill and training to get to a point where you can do that. And I would even argue that it's not necessary. It's not really a field of study that I would suggest you find yourself exploring to that level. It's okay to learn about it, I think, from an academic standpoint, but to become a practitioner is a whole other level of dedication. And you will, like the greats, like Crowley, he's a good example. You'll lose yourself in it. You will lose yourself in it. And most people cannot handle the secrets of the occult revealed to them over time. It eventually wears them down. So I would never suggest someone do that. However, we're all, as I've said before, made in God's image, which means that God does not look like us. It means that we have his nature. We possess a reflection of his nature. When the nature of God is fundamentally, at least for our purposes here in the corporeal world, is a creator. God is the source and being and sustenance of all creation. Therefore, we possess that same nature to create, and therefore creating egregores is actually quite easy once you understand. See, that's the thing about the occult, is why people think it's forbidden, because, it's demonic, it's evil. You're going to do devil worship to do. No. That's not accurate at all. Throw that bullshit out. It is not true. The reason that the occult practices are condemned by the church is because we are not skilled enough. We're not pure enough. We're not perfect enough to wield the power of God in that way. And that's why we should stay away from it. You wouldn't be able to access it if it wasn't already part of your nature. All right. The reason that it's tempered while we're here is that we're not here to harness the power of God right now. We're here to perfect ourselves, to harness God's grace. And then the powers of creation will be given to us in what this thing is that we call the afterlife, which is a complete misnomer. It's the only life, I would call it. And it is, the truth of the kingdom of heaven is not this place where you go to just sort of retire from everything and just live in this blissful state of awe. It's to become. It's to now take your place at the, at the throne of God and to be commissioned with the work of creation. I mean, that is something that's beyond our understanding, but that's all the occult. It's just right now we're not capable of wielding it. So we should stay away from it.
Well, our fallen nature just automatically gets attracted to it, and we become corrupted because it's so easy once you get that little taste of wisdom and knowledge and power.
You can misuse
your ego just takes it and runs.
And it's
very
not
hard
that,
to fight that off.
And it's not that the church wants to control you from it. It's really just because it's to safeguard your salvation.
It's acting like a parent. Like, hey, this is dangerous. You need to stay away from it.
And to safeguard salvation.
Yeah.
Also, the church doesn't direct us the same way a government does, right?
Right.
So if the government a government directive is really not a please.
Well, it's self-serving. Government directives are self-serving.
Or there'll be consequences. When people talk about the church is didactic, or it's it's bossing people around, telling people what to do, it's entirely voluntary.
Yeah.
Again, I think we're going to get onto this with our guest, but what the church does is lay down the things, right? The intellectual, the spiritual approaches to life that are healthy, that have been handed on, that are tested, and it says this is the way, right? Like somebody who may have inspired it. What happens is that we rebel and go our own way, and then we go, the church is so bossy. It's like, well, the church hasn't sent round somebody with a pistol and a pair of handcuffs to come and sort you out.
Nope.
This is a battle going on within your own soul and within your own self-will. You're feeling attacked by the church because you're not living as you should, and this is why people who tend towards more sort of freedom, libertarian thinking, like I know you do and I know I do, we don't believe in no governance. We just don't want the government to be the one that does the most of the governance. It's much better to have the soft power of the church, which tells you what you ought to do, but essentially leaves it to your own conscience, and then your own conscience convicts you. Which is essentially
secular authority is the issue here. Is that governments rule by the standards of men, not by God. They might claim that they're under God or that they are God. I mean, you got these crazy dictators that think that they're divine, and I mean we've had plenty of that over the course of millennia, not just centuries. And we've had communism is the complete removal of God or anything that is not secular, and so that secular mentality is being ruled by men who are flawed. You can't win that way. One of the most brilliant things, I have to paraphrase because I don't know it off the top of my head exactly how he said it, but I think it was Thomas Jefferson when asked, how are we going to safeguard that the government is only populated by good men. And his response to that is, we're not going to be trying to populate it with good men. We're going to put it, we're going to populate it with men that are bound by the Constitution. That's what's going to keep, regardless of what they actually are.
And now they want to throw out the Constitution.
Well, because that's their guardrail, right? I mean, that's their guardrail.
Yeah, it's in the way of people that want to dominate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The thing is, as governments get bigger and bigger in all of our countries, by the way,
right?
That's happened. There's been a massive shift since the Second
people
World
want
War.
People want it.
Exactly,
because people are lazy.
And then it influences the way we think about everything, and so we apply that thinking to the church, and we say, these churches, as though the church's teaching is of a similar application as the government.
Well, a lot of things. A lot of people these days don't know the difference between government and the church. No, they kind of lump them together.
Well, and a lot of churches don't either. Let's be honest.
That's true.
Absolutely. Yes, Father.
Individual churches and church men and church women. In fact, church women more than church men these days. who fall into that trap. But I was going to go back to the original question and ask from a slightly different angle because I'm intrigued. Are there the sort of egregores that can be created over the ages? So, for example, the number 13 being unlucky, or Friday the 13th being an unlucky day. The origin of that, if people don't know, is that's when the
Crusaders.
The Crusaders were put down. Were killed off by the church. The
King Philip, right?
And so, yeah, and so, but that's obviously happened a long time ago, and people now have this association of bad luck with the number 13 who don't even have any idea what the origin of that was. In a sense, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Is I just reflection on that because I don't, in terms of a sort of cultural egregore.
I mean, that is honestly, when we're talking about an egregore, I mean, I think let's maybe qualify some of these terms a bit for people. Egregore, thought form, tulpa. These are all categories of the same kind of projection of the psyche into the external phenomenal world that produces an effect that as if it's a physical action being taken. And so a thought form and a tulpa are pretty much synonymous terms. Tulpa is just the Eastern name for, Buddhists sometimes refer to it. And thought form is kind of just the Western mystery traditions understanding of it. When you talk about a egregore, though, you're talking about something that is large enough, enduring enough that it sort of has its own nature now, and it can persist for generations. It's not just something that affects one person. Usually a thought form only affects one person or a small number of people. An egregore can be something that that people all over can be affected by. So it's much larger than just a standard thought form. So when you're talking about an egregore, we are really talking about something that has some kind of cultural endurance that has been infused into the fabric of reality over centuries or maybe even millennia or even maybe before time. Some of these things can even pre-exist that. And that really gets into the nature of archetypes and the collective unconscious that Carl Jung talks about. However, either way, what Father Chris, what you just said is very true, is that once one has, and I think there was a question about this actually a few weeks ago regarding urban legends. I would argue that you could almost say that the bad luck of Friday the 13th is an urban legend based upon an ancient urban legend where it started with, this is going to be bad because they're killing the Templars, right? And then I think there's even other explanations for it. I've even heard people say, well, there's 12 apostles, 13 would be outside of the perfection that Christ had organized. Of course, the 12 tribes of Israel are reflected in the apostles, as well as the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 houses of astrology. There's a kind of cosmic perfection in the number 12. 13 takes us outside of that perfection. And, that could also explain some of the egregore here. And it really doesn't matter, as Father Chris said. You're right, completely. Father Chris, you're completely right, that it doesn't even matter where the origin is or if people even understand it, because once it gets fused in, the only common ground is that there's usually a fear or trauma response associated with it. And that's what keeps it going, because that's why, you never hear really urban legends of great things happening. You don't know of any date where, coins and millions of dollars fall from the sky on the first of a Monday, when Monday falls on a first or something. You know what I mean? It's it's Friday the 13th. It's always something bad. These legends, these egregores always are associated with something negative, never something good. And so, and I mean, we're predisposed towards the negative. That's part of the fall of nature. Science calls that entropy. It doesn't really matter which angle you take on it. It means the same thing.
You could say anxiety keeps us alive.
Anxiety keeps us alive. So there's that.
Also kills us.
Yeah, it certainly does that too.
Over time,
yeah, it does. I mean,
slowly.
It does. It's very slow. But that's the difference between surviving and living. And the only thing you can ever really do here is survive. You can't really live here. We don't live. We're not capable of living. We're capable of surviving until we die. That's the best we can hope for. And, so everybody's trying to survive longer.
Those kairos moments in life, chronos, time is from naught to whatever. Kairos is the moment of time, right? This is Greek. I think those are the moments where everything just seems so right, and it's hard. You can't pin it down, and you can't recreate it.
Right.
I think they are glimpses of actually living that we get. They're the little glimpses of actually living. People call it all sorts of things, moments of heaven, touched by an angel, but I think they're the moments that we are actually fully alive, but we only get glimpses of it.
You get a taste of it sometimes, even when you're like, I don't know, little perfect moments, like even going on vacation. I remember one time I was in the Caribbean and just looking out over the ocean, sunset, with a cocktail in my hand, and in that moment there was a taste of being alive. You could feel it, and it was much different than just waking up each day doing the drudgery of ordinary life. It was something more special than that, something more profound, something more eternal than that.
And it's different from other moments of pleasure.
You're right.
Pleasure can be recreated, but yeah, those moments are...
They're called peak experiences in psychology. Yeah. And they definitely, they share one thing that's unique to the peak experience, or, to what you're describing, is that there's a certain sense of eternity to it. And there's also a certain calling to it. It's almost as if on some level that the reason it feels so special and so wonderful is because it's not, you can't hold it forever, but that somewhere out there it exists, and in some form or fashion you direct your entire existence towards trying to find it again. I call that the unconscious path towards salvation. I really do. I think that's actually God speaking to us. And that's how I've always interpreted it. So now I don't think I shouldn't say always, because there was a time where I was like, what is this? And then there was a time where I came to understand it better, and I'm more in that category now. And so the next time it happens, and I know what will happen, I'll be prepared for it. And I stop and I think, and I bask in the fact that this is God speaking, because it is, for all intents and purposes, eternity opens up. And there it is, plain and powerful, and you feel it with every fiber of your being. It's a truly remarkable thing. And really all it takes is just getting outside of your negativity, getting outside of your day-to-day monotony, so that you can kind of perceive things differently. This is why it's easier to do when you're on vacation, because you're usually in a different place. The energy's different. You're usually relaxed because you're not at work, and your schedule's different, but you're excited because you're doing something new and you want to have a good time. So you're more predisposed to being open to good things coming to you. It's not that vacation makes it happen. It's just vacation's easier for you to perceive it. You could do this at home too if you were willing, but most people can't bring themselves out of it. Yeah, church could do it too. You just don't pay attention to the people in the pews behind you. They'll bring you right back down to earth. I'll tell you that right now. All right, April, what's our next question?
Next question kind of goes along with what you're talking about a little bit.
Okay.
It says, looking at various supposed haunted or cursed objects, is it archetypes being archetypes that the same story appears to be retold over and over?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that they're basically more so tropes at this point. Little, obvious little moments of what's the word I'm looking for? Just redundancies in people's consciousness, where they just keep pushing the same idea patterns over and over and over again. So I would say that, no, these things are not necessarily cursed in any sense, but again, because of our nature, all we have to do is put some belief or conviction into thinking something's cursed, and it will become cursed, and it's inevitably going to become cursed. I mean, that's the nature of the self-fulfilling prophecy in sociology, as well as the placebo effect in psychology. All of this works on the basis. I think I told the story about the warts before, right? When I was a kid, I was always in the swamps. I was always just over my head in dirt and mud and filth sometimes, just going through the woods, coming back with mosquito bites and spider bites. And I looked like a leper when I was a kid, because I was just like covered in every part of my body with bites because I was always out there in the woods late at night, hardly anything on and just running wild.
Feral child.
I was very feral. Yes, I was. And so I would return in this sorry state. And I guess I picked up the virus that causes warts because it got all over my hands. It was only on my hands, but it was literally everywhere. It was on every finger. It was very unsightly. It didn't bother me because it was just like, oh, look, I'm covered in everything else. So what's a few more warts going to do? But the nurse at school did not like this. We would have to go for random checkups and stuff. Well, maybe not random, but occasional checkups and whatever. And so she saw the warts and she wanted to have a conversation with my parents about getting them what she called burnt off. I guess it was like a cryogenic treatment that
you freeze them.
Yeah, and in those days you had to go to the doctor for it. Now you can buy it at the pharmacy over the counter and do it yourself. But at the time you had to go in and get this done. And so my parents did not like the idea of that. I guess they didn't fully understand what this treatment was going to be, if it was going to hurt. I didn't want to go for it, but they were feeling, I think, pressure from the authorities at school that, are you taking care of your kid kind of thing. And so they wanted to get it fixed. So my mother, being very much interested in alternative medicine and all kinds of medicine, really, not just alternative, but she had this book, and it was a standard book. I think I still even might have it somewhere because it was a medical book from the 1940s or 30s or something. And it was just a book of symptoms and the treatments that can be done. And it wasn't alternative medicine. This was a standard, medical book of the time. And it had a section on warts. And it said that a very effective treatment for warts in children is to fill a spray bottle or a medical bottle with ordinary tap water and tell the child that this is a super strong medication, and you spray it on the warts and over time it will take them away. And so I did not know she was doing this. She decided to try this first. And then, so what she did is she put it in one of my old prescription bottles from a doctor, my pediatrician that I really liked a lot. And I loved this guy. And so she had an empty bottle and she filled it with tap water and said, okay, this is from, his name was Dr. Alec Paula. He said, this is from Dr. Alec Paula. And it's really strong. It might burn a little bit, but it's going to get rid of your warts. And so, I mean, there must have been about 30 or 40 on my hands. So I'm like, yeah. And I remember it burning. I do remember it burning. It did burn. And so, I think I might have even screamed a little bit. And she put it on. And I went to bed. And I kid you not, this is a true story. When I woke up the next morning, they were all gone. They literally disappeared overnight. And when I went into school, the nurse was flabbergasted. She's like, "Oh, so you went to the doctor to get him? I didn't know you got the appointment that quickly." I said, "I didn't go to the doctor." Well, what did you do? I said, "My mother got a prescription from my doctor, and she sprayed it on my hands." And so I did not know this part, but later on, the nurse called and said, "What did you do?" Because that's extremely, even with the cryogenic treatment, it would still leave it takes a while for them to go down.
Scar.
Yeah, it kind of it sort of crusts over and then it goes away, but it doesn't go away overnight. And so she wanted to know and she told her, I read it in one of my books. It was just ordinary tap water, and the nurse did not believe her. She says, "That's just not possible." And my mother was like, "I don't know what to tell you, but that's what we did." And it clearly it's possible because it worked, and it was written about in this book. And that's a true story. That's placebo effect. But look at how therapeutic it is. So placebo is more than just believing something's true and then getting sort of like a psychosomatic response. There's something much more going on there. I think once you take away the barriers of consciousness and the limitations that we think we live within, then we open up more of that divine nature of which we participate in by being made in God's image, and then the power of creation, which includes the power of healing, sort of happens. And this is where miracles come from. And this is how I think prayer works. When you go in and you do you give somebody a relic, and and then they're healed from some terminal illness. You hear these stories, lords, people bathing in the waters, and this is how it happens. It's not just psychosomatic. It's unlocking the limitations that we live, or we force ourselves to live within. And then once, and the child doesn't have to live in that, because, a child's more trusting, and I trusted this doctor, and I trusted my parents. So if my parents are saying this comes from my doctor and it's going to work, then I have no reason. It's going to work. And it did work. And all it was just plain old tap water.
Yeah, you were young. You weren't corrupted by the world yet to have all those doubts.
Yet. Yeah, that's right, because it certainly did happen. So that's how egregores work, and that's, yes, into getting to the question, that is kind of how curses work too, because it doesn't, I was giving you a positive thing because God knows we have enough negative things to talk about. One of the things that in the paranormal, everyone wants to talk about demons and hauntings and possessions. And it's like, why don't we have a show that talks about angels and miracles and apparitions of the saints and all the wonderful things that happen in the church too? Maybe Eucharistic miracles. There's a lot of things that happen in the church that are not related to the devil, and they're even more remarkable. And this is an example of one of the ways in which healing happens, miracle happens, and it can happen in the mundane ways, or it can happen in more divine ways. It doesn't really matter. It all comes from the same source. And so, curses, though, work the same way. If you believe yourself to be cursed, if you put energy into it that way, then you're going to actually manufacture the conditions energetically that are necessary to sustain that curse. And so, haunted dolls are definitely this. And my haunted dolls are even different. Let me just talk to that for a moment. Haunted dolls are a little bit different because haunted dolls are typically the result. Effigies are special in the occult. Okay, anything that has a human form, because again, image of God correlations, right, is another type of reflection of a reflection of God. Okay, so this is like a third reflection of God because it's an image of God's creation, which is an image of Him. All right, and so it sort of has already the appearance of divine nature just by virtue of having human form. And so a doll, which is often loved, or this can even apply to a stuffed animal too, so it doesn't have to be a humanoid thing, but dolls in particular seem to be more inclined towards this phenomenon, but they will often become haunted or cursed or possessed, as some people will say. Everyone knows about Annabelle and all the other ones, right? And really what's happening here is not like somebody, the devil went into this child's toy to like steal souls. It's not like that, even close to that. What it is that these dolls are loved, and love is one of the aspects of God. It's one of God's nature. So if we can say God is creator, well, we can say God is love too. I mean, scripture testifies to this, so we already know it's true. All right, so God is love. Love is truly divine, a divine attribute. So when a child puts love into a doll in the same way that a parent directs love towards a child, and that's what is being imitated here, then the doll sort of becomes alive in that love because it gets infused with the divine through love, and then it sort of becomes animated through love. Now, ordinarily, that's not going to make the doll, walk around and start talking and leaving notes like Annabelle apparently was said to. But it is designed in the way that it works in the occult level to take on, as an effigy, a bit of a thought form projection of the child's love, and it sort of becomes in response to. I can tell you from my own experience, I had a lot of stuffed animals that were very important to me when I was a child. I still have them somewhere in this house. And I can tell you right now, when I was a child, they would move. They would move around. I saw them. So I don't think that they were possessed by some spirit. I think that the energy of my love and affection for them gave them a little taste of life. It just sort of animates them with the breath of God a little bit. Not in the way that we're alive, but in a way that it sort of extends our life to them. And so when a child grows up or the doll gets lost or forgotten or ignored over time, which happens with toys. Children grow up, they get other priorities, they're no longer interested. McDonald's did this really very sad commercial a few Christmases ago about this purple monster that sort of was an imaginary creature that gets forgotten over time. It was a really sad one. I played it for my students years ago.
They made a movie too about imaginary.
I think they did. I didn't see it. I don't know.
The kids outgrow them. And
yes. Well, I mean, Toy Story is kind of that. Disney's Toy Story kind of touches on this. But anyway, the fact is that they do get infused with life, and then when they get forgotten and no longer feel that love, then there's a response that happens to them where then that love gets redirected into the opposing nature. And, of course, the opposing nature to love is, well, we can say it's hate, but it becomes sort of an aggressive sadness. It's more of a traumatic response. Because, see, when children are abused, for example, they don't typically return that abuse with hate. It's usually returned with fear and distrust, and it becomes sort of sometimes it turns into subconscious aggression, and that's what trauma responses do. Not typically do they become of vicious haters. It's more of a passive aggressive kind of response, and so the doll takes on that same spiritual energy and produces that effect. So I don't think Annabelle is a real haunted doll. I think that was a fabricated story. But I do know of dolls that were genuine, ones that are far less famous than Annabelle. And this is almost certainly the story, is that because as soon as you work with the doll as though it's a person, and you give it recognition. I know this sounds ridiculous to the more rational people out there, but this is what exorcists do, okay? Or at least this is what this exorcist does. When you treat every thought form as though it's a real thing, because it is a real thing. What's real is what affects you, okay? That's what we can define reality as. If it affects you, it's real. And so we deal with it as though we're talking to a person. And then we give it awareness of its condition, and then that awareness typically dissipates the response. It's very simple. You don't need to do exorcisms on these things. You don't need to be like, oh, we got to lock it away in some, chamber covered in salt so that it can never get back out. It doesn't have to be that. All right, you can take care of it by simply resolving the unresolved system that is built within it through the product of the child's lack of affection that it no longer has for this thing. This is what happens, okay? So it all speaks to both questions, April, the egregore as well as the curses. Belief is a powerful thing, and we can make anything happen by believing. If enough people believe in something, I guarantee you'll make it happen. You want to know why the world sucks today? Because too many people have bought hook, line, and sinker the negativity of the world. They've taken it into themselves. It's part of their consciousness now, and we're all doing it.
With it.
Yeah, you can't turn on the TV. No, you can't. No.
Or anything without being bombarded with negative stuff.
You can't. And there's a difference between
being told to hate somebody.
And there's a difference between being negative and being authentic.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to deal with negative issues authentically. That's not being a negative person. That's being responsible. It's being a responsible person. But what people are doing, they're not being responsible. They're just absorbing the negativity and then spewing it back out. And this has become an egregore, and it is. And let me tell you, as a person that deals with egregores, you just can't exercise them away in an evening. Once you create something that's that established, it takes generations to resolve. So right. In a way, this egregore we've created in our world today, okay, this egregore is now generations before it will go away.
Well, it's just like
I don't expect to see the end of it in my lifetime.
Yeah, you were saying your thoughts on the Annabelle doll. Well, even if it was originally a fabrication or a story, it's not anymore because it's been made into an egregore through all the belief, through all the years, and all the investigations and.
Yes, I thank you for saying that.
So even if something isn't authentic from the beginning, if you get enough people to believe in it, it absolutely becomes real.
Thank you for saying that, because I didn't want to suggest that Annabelle doesn't have effects.
Wait, yeah.
I just don't believe the story that was told about her. I don't think it was ever real, but I think enough people bought it that now it is real. So it doesn't matter if it happened or not. That's the thing about these things, or anything in the occult. It doesn't matter if something happened or not. It only matters if enough people believe it, then it becomes real, and then now you have to deal with it. So it makes it very important for us to focus on the good things. And when you don't have people that see value in the church, you don't see, you have people that see value in prayer, well, then you don't really have a whole lot of defense against the negativity of the world. And that's the real problem. Father, I mean, I know we have one more question, but did you have anything you wanted to say to that?
I mean, there's obviously nothing new about the fact that misery loves company. My mum used to say that. My mum had all these idioms that, because my grandmother was Irish and had the same head full of idioms, and misery loves company is one that stuck in my mind. I can hear my mum saying it now. And so there's nothing new about that. What is kind of unique for our era is that we have globalized communication, and so we have not only do we have a 24-hour news cycle, we have on-demand misery that you can dial into your favorite podcaster or what have you. And hopefully that's us.
Hopefully that's us.
That's right. Hopefully we don't make you miserable. But
I mean, I don't try to make you miserable, but I'm not gonna guarantee that I won't.
No. Well, life's a struggle. So I think that bombardment is something which is unique to a unique challenge to our generations. I think. It doesn't do just to say, oh, we'll just turn it all off. No one's going to do that. Like, I don't do that.
You can't. I mean, look, you got to be functional in the world. I mean, look, I would love to be able to just turn off my phone and just be like, look, it's the weekend, it's off. I can't do that. I mean, I need to be available for emergencies. I do too much of my,
And a couple of weeks ago, we were reminded of that in Australia, because the government handed down a budget, and all of a sudden, the settings of how your life's going are changed because of this. I mean, Australia is not like America. I mean, when the federal budget is passed in Australia, it actually has immediate consequences. And so, so it'd be all right for me to say, oh, I'm going to go and sit on a hill and meditate and not watch any of this stuff. But actually, then your tax return rolls around and you find out that everything was shifted. So you can, I'm not one of these that just says, oh, just go and disconnect. It's just unrealistic. We can't do it. But it does mean that we have to work a lot harder than our ancestors to develop the protection that our minds, our souls need. I'm not talking about, although you should be concerned about pornography and all of that sort of thing. I'm not actually talking about those kind of classical issues associated with the church. I'm saying you have to have sufficient weapons to be able to maintain grace and a healthy kind of love for other people.
That's where your discernment comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to separate people from issues, which is not always easy to do. But and I'm looking forward to what Jeramy's going to have to say about things like that. I think we do need to work on that the body armor, if you like, of how to again, not ignore or exempt ourselves from that bombardment, but be prepared to deal with it. And obviously, I think a life grounded in prayer, surrounded, orientated towards the only actual truth, which is God, is a good means to do that. But it's not doesn't make you invulnerable.
No. And that's the thing. Prayer's not magic. Church isn't magic.
No, not an incantation.
No, it's not an incantation. It's effort. It's work. Okay, April, what's our final question for tonight?
The last question is, what is going on in Exodus 22, verses 29 through 30? I've seen many explain that the Israelites were instructed to give their firstborn sons to the priesthood, but that doesn't make sense when they're commanded to do the same with their oxen and sheep.
Actually does make sense. Let me read the verse so that people don't have to go look up what the verse is that you just talked about. It's Exodus chapter 22, verses 29 through 30. You shall not hold back the offering from your entire harvest and your wine. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. It shall be with its mother for 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. This is, again, look, a Jewish theologian from, Judaism is going to look at this very differently than a Christian theologian is going to look at this. I'm going to give you the Christian perspective on this one, okay? Theologically, as the fathers of the church understood this, this is an allusion to Christ, who is the firstborn of all creation, in the sense that that for sacrificial purposes he gives himself for our redemption. Okay, so in a sense, the firstborn in Christ, well, he's the firstborn, and then we are all born in Christ as firstborns through baptism. Egypt's firstborns, those born in sin, died in judgment, right? I mean, from the Exodus. And then while Israel's firstborns were born in God, and they were spared through the Passover. So therefore, those firstborns belong to God, and we're the firstborn in baptism in Christ. And so therefore we all become firstborns in this sense, and an offering to God. And so the fathers of the church look at almost everything from the Old Testament and see it as a foreshadowing of something that Jesus eventually does. But, this is, and most importantly, I need to make sure that this is clear for those in the audience that, think about these things in more historical ways. This is a theological account and a theological explanation. It's not a historical account in the same way that we can talk about, what George Washington did. Okay, so you have to read these things theologically to understand them, because the ancients recorded their lives differently than we do today. They were far more you could say almost poetic and metaphorical and allegorical in the way that they perceive the world.
Well, going back to something I said earlier,
yeah.
Bishop, is it not that those kairos moments, as I called them,
yeah,
I can't remember the term you used.
Peak experiences, peak moments.
Peak experiences.
Yeah.
In a sense, if you think about how old the scriptures are, what we've got are the peak experiences being written down, right?
Yeah.
You got we have this directly said, like in the Gospel of John, for example. Well, Jesus did loads more things. That there wouldn't be enough pages of a book to write about. But in a sense, we've got the ones written down that help us to understand, in a sense, the basics of the incarnation, the mission, the life, death, resurrection of Jesus. We've got the things that we need to know, but there's loads more things that that you couldn't list. But I want to say something important about this verse, and I'm with you. I take this completely out of the historical. Because I think the historical context.
I take it out of the Jewish context, because Judaism did not have that part of the revelation.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible to get to it anyway.
Yeah.
I think I personally, I think it's a folly, maybe because I'm a Christian, but a practical experience of this sort of teaching today. How many times do people think, "Oh, well, I'm done with that old couch. I'll give it to the church," right?
Yeah.
This says no.
No, you take your best.
Sit on the old couch.
Yeah.
You buy the new couch for the church.
Yeah.
And so people will, we use vestments. Oh, how much do those vestments cost? The only people that ever ask that question are sat on a $4,000 couch watching a $2,000 television.
It's true.
Right.
And so
I can say that from experience.
Yeah. So you give your first fruits to the church, then I'll let you criticize whatever you like. But honestly, this is a mentality that's got to be entered into. And I'm not talking about give my church loads of nice things. That's not the point I'm making at all. I'm just saying that it's not about the actual material object. It's about the intention in your mind. And if basically your thoughts are, I'll give God the dregs,
right,
you probably got your thoughts wrong.
Yeah. No, it's correct. And just to answer that last part of the question, to clarify that last part of the question, where it says, it doesn't make sense when they are commanded to do the same with their oxen and sheep. And see, the firstborn oxen and sheep were the sacrificial oxen and sheep.
Right.
Okay, so it was to link the firstborn.
Cross.
Yeah, your firstborn, I mean, not to say that secondborns and thirdborns aren't great, but in ancient Jewish times, the firstborn was like the most sacred, right? So that was the most profound thing you could do is sacrifice that one. And this is an example of that. And see, understand that baptism is death in Christ as well as life in Christ. It's both. You enter into the sacrificial option. You become born again is not an exaggeration here. You are born in a new life. You are now new in God. And now baptism, under the theology of the church, makes you a new person in God. You're no longer, that's why your sins, I mean, there's no, confession before baptism, because baptism has made you a new person. The person you were that committed those sins doesn't exist anymore.
Which
so those
makes
sins
that
don't
full
exist.
immersion so beautiful.
That's why I like full immersion. Yeah.
So symbolic and beautiful to
if full immersion can be done.
To die and drown and then be brought back up.
Yeah.
It's really
you
cool
really
to watch.
feel it. And in the ancient times, I've told you this before, baptism was done naked. So it really was, you were getting stripped down to a baby again and being born just as a baby. Again, we've lost that with all of our social, hang-ups, but
all of our prudeness.
Prudeness, yeah.
Prudeness.
Thank you, Puritans. Thank you, Father Chris, with your Puritans. Sending them over here.
Yeah. And your hat sucked, Puritans. Your hats were horrible.
You didn't want them; you gave them to us, right? All right.
He kicks them out.
We're going to take our first break here. When we come back, we'll be talking with a brand new guest. Okay, you're going to like this. This is going to be a really good discussion on, judgment and opinions and the psychology of being right with Jeramy Gordon. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour of Vestiges After Dark. Now let's get started with tonight's topic on the psychology of being right with our special new guest, Jeramy Gordon. He's going to talk about his book and some of his life experience with Bridging the Gap. Don't go away. Our guest this evening is Jeramy Gordon, who is an author, entrepreneur, and former newspaper publisher whose work focuses on communication, conviction, and the challenge of disagreeing well in a divided culture. Early in his career, he founded and ran the Santa Barbara Daily Sound, where his experiences in journalism shaped his views on public debate, truth, and persuasion. After the newspaper closed during the financial crisis, he reinvented himself as a successful digital marketing entrepreneur. Jeramy is the author of Opinionated, Not Judgmental, a book exploring why people become so divided, why disagreement so quickly turns personal, and how we can hold strong convictions without condemning those who disagree with us. Drawing from journalism, faith, personal failures, and public conflict, he encourages people to pursue truth with both conviction and humility. He lives in Southern California with his wife and 2 children. Welcome, Jeramy, to the show. How are you doing tonight, Jeramy?
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you, and we're looking forward to this, particularly this subject matter. I think it's a really important one. As I've addressed at the first hour of the show, it's not something that really needs to stay in the shadows. It's something we need to start talking about, opening more dialogue about. It needs to happen on a grand scale because from media to marketing to schools and culture, everybody is being manipulated, I would say, into becoming more and more divisive. Our politics are the best example of this, but it's happening in religion, as you know. So I think I'd like to start off by kind of asking you about in your book. Okay, let's start with your book, because your book, Opinionated, Not Judgmental, is really details at the very beginning a Christmas Eve story back in 2012 where your father-in-law, I believe it was asking or talking about a question or something that somebody brought up, and he gave an answer that started a bit of an argument, and that was sort of a realization point for you. So let's start there, I think.
Yeah, so this is, my wife's side of the family, as you mentioned. It was Christmas Eve, and they are, a very just lively bunch of people who have strong convictions, and they're all Christians, and but they, like to have conversations. And this one Christmas Eve, someone was talking about a subject. And I honestly can't even remember what the subject was, but my father-in-law chimed in with his response. And my father-in-law is a very strong Christian man. And someone immediately jumped on him and said, "That's judgmental." And he goes, "I'm not judgmental. I'm just opinionated." And one of his sisters, jumps up right away and goes, "Well, what's the difference?" And for me, this was like a very awkward time in my life, because I was newly married, but I had also just closed down the newspaper that I had spent the last 7 years of my life running. And so it was kind of a pivotal moment for me, because I was still unsure of, who I was at that time. I was kind of quiet and reserved and still trying to rediscover myself, so to speak. And I remember I just kind of opened my mouth and I kind of gave my definition of the difference between opinionated and judgmental, and the fact that, being opinionated is holding strong convictions, but being judgmental is treating people differently who don't share those same convictions with you. And it kind of just shut up the room, like everyone, there was just this kind of calm quiet where it was like this kind of realization. We're like, okay, that makes sense.
It does.
Well, it does, because opinionated is really an adjective and judgmental is really a verb. So, it's a very different dynamic between the two, hence the name of your book, right?
Yes,
exactly. So as it applies, I think the framework, I spent a considerable amount of time today sort of refreshing myself and kind of speed reading through the book. And what I've noticed is a common theme that sort of comes up in it, that becomes sort of your thesis. And you argue that disagreement as it exists today between people often feels like a personal attack on that person's identity. Why would you say we've become so emotionally fused to our opinions? Is it because we're so obsessed with our identities now?
Well, yeah, it's become, tribal warfare, and social media has just exacerbated this concept, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden, we found our tribes all across the globe, and so we can have our opinions, and we can have conversations with only the people who we know agree with us 100%. And that's kind of dangerous, right? Because you never used to know what your neighbor thought. You never knew who they voted for. In polite conversation, you didn't have those topics didn't come up. And now people seek out, specifically groups that are aligned with their worldview. And they get into these silos of information, and it's dangerous. So when they actually do kind of break out into the real world where there's differing views and differing opinions, it kind of sparks these heated conversations where they're not used to having to deal with that kind of confrontation.
Well, the algorithms create echo chambers. I mean, certainly, I noticed that with trying to promote this show, I use AI in a lot of capacity. I actually enjoy AI. I'm probably an anomaly out there, but I do like it, and I use it a lot, and it helps me be a lot more effective and efficient with my work. But I was using it to sort of help me brainstorm ideas for promoting the show. And I asked, why is it that, we'll get one video that sort of gets 7,000 views, and then another one that gets, 30 in the first 24 hours. And, it's kind of a peculiar thing. And so I was asking, what's happening with the algorithm? And AI felt, after doing its analysis, whatever it's doing, that the algorithms are having a hard time identifying the audience for this show, because it talks about so many seemingly opposing viewpoints and subject matter that it doesn't know, should we promote it to Christians? Well, maybe not, because they talk about paganism sometimes. Should we promote it to New Agers? Well, maybe not, because they talk a lot about the gospel.
Anytime you can throw the algorithm off, it's a good thing.
Yeah. And so basically, that means we're doing something right, I think. But basically what it also tells me about how algorithms work with not just this show, with everything online, is that once it's identified who you are, what kind of person you are, what you like, then it just force feeds you, keeps shoveling into your mouth exactly what you want to hear. And as you say, when you get out into the real world, that's not like that, right? You don't get algorithms telling you who you get to talk to.
Yeah, and this isn't just a theory that you have. I mean, this has been proven that the algorithms reward outrage, right? And we've actually even seen recently some lawsuits come to light where finally these social media platforms are starting to be held accountable because of the dangers of them force feeding this kind of information to people and keeping them in their silos, and how dangerous that has come, and the mental health crisis that is creating.
Oh yeah,
and rightfully so. I mean, normally I don't, I think we're a little bit too litigious of a people, but I think every now and then sometimes somebody needs to have their ass handed to them, and I think this is one of those examples, because really, social media has done a lot of good. It has. I mean, look, we couldn't do what we're doing right now without social media. I mean, I would not be able to speak to the world. And we've got people all over the world listening to us right now, and will listen to us into the future, because it gets preserved on social media. It gets saved there. People can access it on demand. The wonders of technology are beautiful. However, when they're misused, they are a horrific thing to look at. And we're now experiencing that separation that's been caused by technology, and the generations now that grew up with it don't know how to interact in the real world like normal people. And so we're seeing a compounding effect, I think. So rightfully so, I agree. These companies should be punished.
I'm a digital marketer, so my business wouldn't exist without the internet, right? I mean, there's a lot of good that can be done. Yeah. But social media platforms have for since their existence just claimed that we're just platforms, right? We're just conduits for information. But it's come out recently that no, these algorithms are designed to fuel this sort of outrage, and I think that's where it gets dangerous. It's not the actual idea of coming together in an online community and sharing information and having conversations. It's how these social media platforms choose who to show the content to and who not to show it to.
Straight up manipulation.
Yes.
People.
I mean, we saw this in politics. We see it in politics. We see it in religion. And it really came to light during the 2016 election, for example. Right. Yeah. That's when we really saw these kind of algorithms, start to have a major impact on people's lives.
It's true. You're right. You're exactly right, because I mean, it certainly wasn't like that when I was a child. I can tell you that. And I don't remember it being that way through a significant part of my adulthood until, I would say
it was 2016, because as a cop for 26 years. My career was pretty smooth up until about 2016, until I retired.
Yeah.
And it was like they were telling us, be careful when you're in uniform because, people were being attacked. Remember all the ambushes that were going on and all the riots?
That's the year I left as well. It's funny that it should be the same
2020,
year.
I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
In the nick of time, too, with COVID.
I mean, no doubt about that. Yeah. So, obviously there's a lot of ego involved here and ego stroking. And certainly there seems to be a part of our psychology that is almost addicted to the negative emotions that anger causes. I think people are addicted to anger. I really do, or feeling that angry feeling. They want to log in and get the next fix.
It's that adrenaline rush when you're like, oh, I've got to correct this person, or oh, this hateful whatever. It's a quick rush, and then you start to chase it, just like any drug.
So why do you think being right? Because it's not just enough to have a discussion. Like when I was a kid, look, my grandfather was, I guess, more of a liberal thinker, and my uncle was more of a conservative thinker. Of course, we didn't have the kind of extremes of that spectrum as much back then.
The two parties were different.
They were more aligned, yes. I mean, there wasn't as much difference between them like it is now. Now you have like progressivism, and that's a completely different type of liberal than the Democrats of the 1970s or 60s. And so they would get into these little debates and arguments that I remember growing up listening to. Archie Bunker was another kind of example of that, All in the Family. And they watched that and they loved it. Both of them, both the liberal and the conservative loved them. And so, it was a different time. But, back then you talked about it, maybe you argued about it, maybe you yelled about it, but at the end of the day, you just moved on and went to dinner, and nobody hung on to it. Now they're hanging on to it. Relationships are being lost over it.
Families are in chaos.
The cancel culture thing. Yeah. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, well, you're right. It's not. We're not having disagreements over tax policy anymore, right? And now it's like it's not. Oh, you think this is good, I think this is bad, and we can agree to disagree. Now it is. If you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. And that's why I felt like the book is so timely right now, because that kind of attitude and mentality has exploded in the last 10 years. Yeah. And there was about 5 years ago, there was a study done by two researchers at Yale, and they looked at, millions of tweets from more than, 10,000 Twitter accounts. And they found that social media platform particularly was reinforcing outrage based on behaviors like likes and retweets and engagement, right? And so the study found that people learn over time that expressing moral outrage gets rewarded socially, which causes them to post increasingly outraged content, right? So in other words, outrage becomes a conditioned behavior. And one of the most interesting things, one of the most interesting findings of the study was that politically moderate users were actually more influenced by these social rewards than like highly ideological users were, right? So if you already had very high, ideological beliefs, you weren't as impacted, but the people who were in the middle, they were much more impacted. And the researchers, they even suggested that this could explain how ordinary people gradually become more extreme online.
Yeah, and we, my God, we're seeing that worse today than ever.
We just saw it yesterday with the mosque attack in San Diego down in your neck of the woods. Yeah. 100% those kids were radicalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think sorry, hello.
He's our resident. He's our resident Australian. He kind of gives us our conservative slant on this show.
And just to continue the confusion that we have on all Americans, I am originally from England, so because I know Americans famously find it hard to tell the difference between English and an Australian accent.
Oh no, I can tell.
I'm basically making the problem 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, because your English is just so perfect that I've never heard an Australian talk like you. So if they're thinking you're Australian, they really don't know geography or culture or anything.
Lingo's completely different down under. Yeah,
and I'm a Northern Englishman as well, so I have a particular accent.
So proper.
But I was does this not go hand in hand also with because simultaneously, research, especially in America, but this is true across the Western world, that traditional religiosity, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, has gone down, because in a sense, politics and ideological politics has become the new religion. It is. This is my thesis. Like G.K. Chesterton, I think, said, when you stop believing in God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. And I think this is the anything that's filled that gap. And so now, I want to hear your reflection on this. A healthy Christianity says you actually do, in fact, take on the identity of Christ. Okay, so you do, in fact, have your your identity tied up with your belief in Jesus Christ. I happen to think that leads to good things. Can lead to bad things as well if you've got your Christology wrong. Whereas actually, this new religion of politics, we now actually have established religions. They're just not Christian ones. They're political ones. Yeah. That leads to really bad things. So I mean, I don't know. There are questions around that, and your reflections on whether that sort of religious devotion is in fact part of the problem.
Yeah, I absolutely think so, right? And it's because we know that the fastest growing religion, so to speak, is no religion at all, right? And as you mentioned, so there's more and more people either turning from faith or just never finding faith or whatever. But that number is growing faster than Christianity is growing faster than Islam is growing, than Judaism, anything out there. So that is a problem, because when you don't have a worldview, then politics has to fill that void, and it ends up being politics. Mm-hmm. And so, and when you're so married to your political beliefs, when someone attacks them, they're attacking you personally. And right. I think that's true for anything, right? So if as Christians, if someone were to attack Christianity, we would feel attacked personally, because we feel like we are one in Christ. But when, we should be able to attack ideas, that, whether they're bad ideas or good ideas or whatever, we should be able to have conversations about ideas. And that's the shift that has happened when you go online and you try to have a conversation about an idea that you perceive as a bad idea. All of a sudden that person feels attacked, because that's their worldview. That's their religion.
They're holding it too close to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes.
Which also makes it very difficult to change your mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, the first words of Jesus in the gospel are metanoia. It's translated in modern translations as repent, but it's not very good translate. It's change your mind, right, or allow your mind to be changed. And I look back and think, the young Chris was a kind of a socialist, because I'm from Manchester and was surrounded by that, and I've gone through many and an atheist, by the way, and I've gone through many different I've allowed my thoughts to be changed. Now a cynic, or somebody who wants to pin you to that because that's their side of politics, would say, oh, you're a class traitor, if they're going to use Marxist terms, or oh, you change your mind as often as you change your socks. That's a way to sort of keep you back where you were. I think the mature response is to say, well, when you're presented with new information, you need to reassess. And so actually, it's that great quote, I think, is it Newman? To be perfect requires change, and to be perfected means to have changed often. So whereas the current cult of this sort of ideological fixation is to say you mustn't ever change your mind. So it's actually at its core anti-intellectual.
No, I think the ability to be able to bring in new information and change your mind is one of the most powerful things any human being can possess. It's if we're so stuck in our ways that we're so stubborn and we refuse to change, there's no hope for that.
And your story is about you going through that process, right?
100%. Yes.
So
Yeah, the
did
book
that work
reads
out?
largely as almost like a memoir. You know, it's very autobiographical in that sense, where you talk about experiences and how you made mistakes, and then how scripture and other aspects of your realization changed your approach towards these things to arrive at a better place. Which is, I guess, the lesson here is how we can all do that.
Well, I think, from my perspective, I have the ability to change my mind when I get new information. It just takes me a long time, right? So I have to like learn it and then experience it and then absorb it, and then ultimately my mind changes. And that's how I've lived my life forever. So there wasn't one day where I just woke up and became a Christian, right? I didn't pray about it and then I was like filled with the Spirit and I became a Christian. It happened over a long progression as I researched and asked questions and discovered things.
I'm so glad you said that.
Well, because I was in college. I went to college as an atheist. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself an atheist because I just went to a college as an unknowing person. That's
agnostic, more of an
it.
agnostic person.
Yeah, agnostic is an okay term to use, but I didn't even know Jesus was a real person, because no one told me, right? And so I go to this religious studies class in college, and my professor's up there talking about, Muhammad and Jesus and all these different people like they're real people. And I'm like, why are you talking about Jesus as if he's a real person? And this professor, who was not a Christian, he was like, well, there's no debate. Jesus was a real person who walked the planet. The question is whether or not he was God. And that for me was like, wait, really? He was this real person? So then I had to start doing research and start figuring out who it was. And so that was kind of like the start of how I became a Christian, but it still took me 10 years from that point to really call myself a Christian. And then it took me another 10 years after that to really start trying to live like one.
So you did the work.
It was a very long progression.
And it's going to be the rest of your life trying to live like one.
You're good company there.
We're all in that boat. You do think it has something to do, let me frame it this way. Do you think some of the problem here has to do with that religion, and maybe perhaps why religion is so problematic for so many people, is that religion is most simplistically can be defined as the search for truth. And you could even maybe add to that the participation in the truth that you find along the way. But I'm not so sure people who say they're seeking truth are actually seeking truth. It seems as though they're really seeking confirmation of what they already believe. You think that's the true barrier here, or do you think there's more to it than that?
No, I think that's absolutely a barrier, right? So, and confirmation bias is a huge problem, and I found myself falling into it early on. But one of the things I've taught myself now is when I read something online that seems to affirm my worldview, I look at it from a skeptical point of view, because I have to know, like, am I just seeing this and thinking, okay, that sounds good, I agree with that, I'm gonna believe it's true. So I've trained myself, and this comes back from my journalistic training as well. But I've just trained myself that anytime I see something that's like, yep, that's got to be true because I already believe it, that I have to change my mindset and look at it from a more skeptical point of view.
And see, that's lost in journalism today. I don't think they're looking for truth anymore.
No,
they're writing stories. They're writing fictions. I mean, they really should be in Hollywood writing movies.
They borrow from each other.
I know.
They borrow from each other and use the same words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what has happened to my profession is a disgrace. Honestly, it truly is. It's shameful.
When did that change, and at what point did you start to see the shift? I don't know how long you've worked in it, but where did that change happen?
So I was in print journalism, but we noticed this shift in broadcast journalism decades ago, right? Really, with the invention of the 24-hour news cycle, with
CNN,
cable news network, CNN coming along, and them having to fill, all this airspace with news, all of a sudden talking heads started popping up, and that became a thing. But print really sort of held on to that journalistic integrity. At least, in my view, it tried to for a long time. But when the internet started becoming popular and social media sites became the thing, all of a sudden you had to be first, and print had to be first in order to compete with all the other news outlets, because CNN now had a website and they were writing articles and posting them on social media, and it wasn't just the print publications who kind of had the monopoly there. So now they're all racing to see who can be the first to post on social media, and being first trumped being right. And that
Yeah,
was the end of it.
And now they don't recant when it turns out later that they jumped the gun. They won't recant, or they'll just bury it.
It's buried, in the bottom of
another
story.
It'll be a sentence right before break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think journalism should be nonprofit?
Ooh.
It's tough because
I've got
He's in there.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I figure you're a good one to ask this question to.
Having owned a newspaper, I will say that it pretty much was nonprofit.
Okay.
For me, but I'm a capitalist. I think that there's a place for capitalism, but you have to have a moral worldview in order for capitalism to work in any industry, and journalism is one of those as well. The problem, specifically to journalism, is there used to be what we call the wall between news and opinion. And again, that's what kind of went away with the 24-hour news cycle, right? All these talking heads they had to get up there, and it wasn't just a news story happened. They had to fill the air. So they had to talk about it. And it was just people sharing their opinions, and it brought eyeballs because people cared about what you thought and what your take was. And so that just kind of exploded from there. And then it started just blurring the line at first and then completely crossing it, so.
Yeah. And see, you bring up a good point about, I think capitalism is so dangerous because it's so wonderfully free, and freedom requires a significant amount of personal responsibility,
Maturity.
and morality is really the foundation to personal responsibility, really. I mean, so if you have a civilization like the one we live in now that is devoid of this largely, how can you have a capitalism that actually services people instead of takes advantage of them?
Well, you can't, because we're flawed people, right? We're not. That's kind of the problem, is that no human created system will ever be good enough, and that's whether it's capitalism, socialism, communism, whatever it wants to be. There's humans involved in it.
Yeah,
but I think there is a difference, though. I mean, because I think because essentially capitalism comes out of. I mean, it's been warped, as all things are, and we're not saved by capitalism, but because capitalism comes out of fundamentally a Christian worldview, it accepts the flaw, right? Whereas socialism is utopian. So the reason socialism is much more dangerous is because it doesn't start with what you just said, the acceptance of fallen human nature. And so it's why what looks good on a spreadsheet, oh well, we'll do this and that'll work, because they don't take account of fallen human nature or self-will. It always falls down. And so which is not to laud and praise capitalism. I mean, famously, it's the least bad system, right?
Yeah.
It's not the perfect system.
I think we should phrase it in that, because I mean, it is the least bad, but it is hardly, I think, a perfect system, but not because of the system itself. And we've talked about this before, Father Chris. The issue is, I mean, we can blame it, we can make a scapegoat out of it, but everything really comes back to human nature and how it fails to be perfect. So the problem with capitalism is it really requires a large number of honest, moral people, and we don't have that.
Well, as the founders of your great country, which I do love, despite internet comments, acknowledged. But I think to bring this back to it doesn't really matter whether you look at this from a psychological or theological perspective. What we're dancing around, I think, is the difference between conscience, developing a conscience, and self-will, and they're not the same thing. Okay, so self-will is associated with pride, right? So all of a sudden,
or gain.
Aquinas with the superbia, that you might be right on the issue, but if you allow your desire to conquer, your self-will to be at the foreground, then you're actually doing something wrong. You're acting out of pride, even though you might be right on the facts.
Well, because when you look at social media, though, look at social media and how the algorithms are shoveling bullshit all day long at us, right? Most of it's lies today, AI generated lies, a lot of it. Okay, and people are buying it. I mean, I get asked the question every day, look at this, can you believe this happened? And then I do maybe 5 minutes of maybe not even that, maybe 1 minute of a little bit of fact checking on it, and find out it's a fabrication, or it's like an exaggeration of a real story that happened somewhere. The problem is that as long as they get rewarded with the clicks, it doesn't matter if it's factual, because the people that are getting paid or whoever's making money on this, they don't care if they're shoveling bullshit down your throat. They don't care what you eat. They just want your money. And see, that's my concern, is that maybe something like journalism that is designed to protect truth and even has a constitutional amendment that speaks of it, maybe it can't be put at risk with for-profit interest, because as soon as you do, it's too powerful. And
well, the alternative is as a
nonprofit source of information.
The alternative ultimately comes down to government control. So I'm not. It's like
private industry can be nonprofit.
Not really.
Why not?
I mean, because it ceases to be private industry if it's not for profit.
I think you still, no matter whether you're for profit or nonprofit, you're still run by human beings who have worldviews and biases and agendas and all that kind of stuff. So it's whether you're doing it to appease an advertiser or to appease a donor or to appease yourself, there's always going to be something that can seep into that.
So you're saying that there's always going to be gain that can be had. So if you've got an unscrupulous person in there, then they're just going to exploit that.
Yes.
If it's not money, it's something else. I get it. No, it makes sense, because
plenty
churches
of
do this.
nonprofits are being prosecuted for fraud. So.
Churches do this.
Yeah.
I mean, they do.
Yeah.
So if churches can do it, you're right. I mean, you're right. Let's talk about transformation, because you talked about in the book becoming a keyboard warrior, yourself at one time, and that it made you realize that at some point you crossed that line from conviction into combatedness. So let's talk about how that realization happened for you. What was that transforming moment, and how did you allow yourself to change?
Yeah, I really saw myself in like sort of the early days of this keyboard warrior phase, as I call it, as an arbiter of truth, so to speak, right? I was out there, doing what I thought was the right thing to do for people who were either misinformed or uninformed. So I would start off by, this again, I always go back to my journalistic training, because when I was in my early days of online, debate and conversation, I'd always ask questions. I'd always like, why do you think that? Where did you get that opinion? How did you come to that conclusion? Those sorts of things. And I would try to dissect their argument and reverse engineer it. And then what I ultimately kind of devolved into was the person who I was trying to counteract, right? Yeah. So I start, after years of kind of these back and forth debates and never being able to change people's minds, and I started becoming one of those judgmental people who just was all about the clapback, right? How fast can I respond? I would try to formulate their response in my head before they even typed it, and I would have my response ready to go. And I would spend hours on my phone just typing away. And there was a moment where, it was late at night, I'm in bed, I'm typing away on my phone, and my wife rolls over and looks at me and she goes, you're not the same person when you're in those conversations. Yeah. And that was like a totally eye-opening moment for me, because I didn't even realize that it's like already 11 o'clock at night. My kids went to bed. I missed doing bedtime with them. My wife already rolled over and went to sleep. I missed having conversation with her because I was so enthralled in these online debates.
It's an easy trap to fall into. I think we've all been there.
But is that not about allowing the ego to go outside the intellect? Do you know what I mean? Like, the healthy way is for the ego to be subordinate to the intellect, but social media encourages the total opposite.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but I kind of woke up at that point. I didn't stop instantly, but I kind of caught on to what I was doing, and I maybe tried to get a little bit better about hiding it. Like I wouldn't. When it was time for bedtime, I would put my phone away. I would save my debates for daytime or office breaks and stuff like that. And so I kind of tried to be a little bit better about hiding it, but it was still a huge part of me. And I was during this time, I was growing in my faith. I was reading my Bible. I was going to church. I was doing Bible study with friends, and I was trying to just absorb as much of the Word as possible in my life. But I was one of those Christians who I drank a lot, and I could recite Ecclesiastes 9:7, like the back of my hand, where it's like, eat your food and drink your wine with enjoyment because the Lord already approves of your works. It's like, I was one of those kind of guys who was like, yeah, I mean, the Lord's fine. I'm getting, and then, as I started reading more, and it's like, no, don't be drunk. But, it's like, and I started realizing these things. And again, it was just this very slow progression for me. And I was like, all of a sudden, okay, I was like, well, I gotta stop drinking. And I became like sober curious, like, at 39 years old, I became like sober curious, and I started listening to podcasts about the ill effects of alcohol. And I woke up the day after my 40th birthday, and I was hungover. I had just spent the night with all of my closest friends and family, and we were partying and drinking and eating and all this kind of stuff. And I woke up the next morning just feeling terrible. I was lost. I was depressed, and I was like, how did I just have the best night of my life with my closest friends and family, do everything I love doing, and I feel like this the next morning? And that was the moment for me that I was like, I'm done. I turned off my phone. I stopped drinking alcohol. I focused on my health. I've lost 70 pounds since then.
Good for
I
you.
have, I've really focused on just maturing as a person. And that was almost 4 years ago. I'll be 44 in September. So it's almost 4 years ago. And I don't know how to explain it other than it was a God thing. God took over my life and was like, I'm in control now, not you.
So it comes down to, philosophically, really, it comes down to sort of surrendering a little bit of that identity, doesn't it? It's kind of what Father Chris was talking about with ego. But I don't think people like talking about ego. Maybe it's overused and it gets convoluted and misunderstood. People think it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a thing to be controlled. But identity is really, I think, far more problematic because, what's the first thing you do when you go and you meet someone? Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, this is what I do. This is what we're always creating categories for ourselves, and then we create.
I deliberately never ask that question because I'm with you.
I'm glad you don't.
Such a terrible. I know it's a cliche, and people want to talk, and people ask out of meanness, but it's a terrible question.
Well, it's like even with politics, like I have a lot of conservative views. I have a lot of liberal views, and I have a lot of I guess you could say libertarian views, which is the foundation to all of them. And so when I'm talking about any particular political issue out there in the wild, if I'm talking to a conservative, I'm way too liberal for them, and they hate me. And if I'm talking to a liberal, I'm way too conservative for them, so they hate me. And in reality, it's like, you don't realize just how much I actually understand about the things that you believe in. But because you've already categorized me and you wanted a category, like who'd you vote for? I'll never forget, I got my septic tank pumped a few years ago. And the damnedest thing, the guy is there pumping shit out of this tank. And what does he say to me? Who'd you vote for? Did you vote for, I hope you voted for Trump. And it's like, first of all, what business is it of yours who I voted for? And second of all, what a weird question to ask.
He was trying to break the ice conversation.
I mean, I guess.
Not a good category to start with.
So I didn't really give, not a good category and not a good time. Because, it's just not a good time. And so I'm talking to him about, this, and I didn't give him an answer. And so I guess he just immediately assumed because I wasn't angered by him talking about Trump because, Trump doesn't bother me. I like a lot of the things he does. I don't like a lot of the things he does. It's like, I think that's true of every single person I know. Trump's no different.
Great politicians like plumbers.
Yeah.
If you can fix the washing machine, they're a good plumber.
Or if you can pump the septic tank, then go do it. But this guy, this guy's, I guess thought that because I didn't get angry, and so he's just talking about, all Kamala Harris this and Hillary Clinton that and trying to, like, I guess, get camaraderie and looking for confirmation. And
we can't expect everybody to be so integrated, right?
Yeah, and he wanted to know if you were part of his tribe.
Yeah, his tribe. And I refused to join. I refused to join tribes, because I see value in everybody. I don't agree personally. I don't, look, I've got gay friends, very good, very close gay friends there's not a interest in the world, and there's not a thing in the world that could ever get me sexually attracted to a male. However, I can accept the fact that this is their reality. I don't have to, engage with it. I don't have to participate in it. I can value the friendship without having to be involved with that side of their life. And, the good thing about these friends is that they don't make their sexuality out to be the be all and end all of their existence. This is the big problem, I think, with a lot of identity politics that gets into the gender sex dynamic.
Yeah, it
is
becomes
that
all you are.
Yeah, and all they want to talk about is what I don't care who you sleep with in your bedroom. You do you. You do you.
I don't
all
want
right?
to know. Ain't none of my damn business.
I live my life. You live your life. I don't need to know about that, and I don't want to be involved. I don't want to know about that. I don't need that information.
We have to distinguish between tolerance and charity, right? So Fulton Sheen was big on this. Tolerance is sort of saying, your errors don't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of, going back to the fundamental position of how do you engage with people that are wedded to their political beliefs or whatever it may be, tolerance says, your errors don't matter. We're not actually supposed to be in that category. Charity says your errors matter. You matter to me enough to try and deal with those errors. But here's the rub. You can only do that if you have a relationship with somebody. And so social media is the total opposite. I don't know you from a bar of soap, and yet I'm going to start telling you how to live your sex life, right? That's how you become what St. Paul would say was a clanging gong, right? That's not acting in love. In order to I don't believe we should tolerate error. I think if people don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, I think they're in error. But I'm not going to achieve anything if I just go online and tell everybody that's not a professing Christian that they're an idiot, because first of all, they're not idiots. and second of all, it's not going to have anything like that effect. In order for me to act in charity, which is caritas, it means love. It's an aspect of love, a word for love in Greek. In order to act in that way, I have to have sufficient relationship with somebody to be able to penetrate. That's how the ego can set itself aside to allow correction. That's what basically happens when you talk about conversion experiences. That's why I think authentic ones are ones that happen like you've described over time, because it takes a while for our ego to sublimate itself to truth. And generally that happens when someone's walking alongside you who loves you, who has got your best interests at heart, and therefore you're able to take that correction. And that correction generally happens, it's almost mystical. It's almost like you can't tell that it's happening because it's acting in love. And you can't do that on Twitter. You just can't.
Right. Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to our conversation about the media too, right? Like, if you follow the mainstream media, and I'd love, Father Chris, I'd love to have your, opinion on this as someone outside of this country looking in. But if you look at the mainstream media in the United States, you would think that we are just this bitterly divided country. If 50-50, everyone is we're at each other's throats all the time. But if you actually look at the data, we agree on 80% of the topics, and it's really the 10% at the extreme right and the 10% at the extreme left where the disagreement is. But that 80% of us in the middle, it's not what the media portray, right? And so I think that's an important conversation to have, because so many of us, we get into this tribal divide, and we listen to what the media says, and we're like, yeah, we're supposed to hate that person, but it's like, no, if you actually just go outside and talk to your neighbor.
Also, we listen to what the media says, right? I subscribe to the Daily Wire. I listen to, so I understand American media landscape, but I live outside of it. But the truth is that the vast majority of Americans don't. They're busy. They've got kids. They've got work. They've got, it's why often, the people that work the hardest are the least affected by this bullshit. I know I can say bullshit on this show because the bishop says it all the time.
I do.
And so I'm from Manchester.
I call it like I see it. I live authentically. That's my rule.
Yeah. And so, but the vast majority of people actually are not penetrated by that. And also, it helps me to, and I think being outside helps even more, understand the wisdom of the founders of your country. Because the reason you end up with this sort of 50-50 almost inertia of government is because it's by design, right?
Yeah.
And the 10% on the extremes don't like that.
Right, exactly.
And it's so funny because on the left, you know, I mean, there's a bit more honesty there. I'm not a leftist, but, you know, at least they acknowledge they want to destroy the Constitution and replace it with something else. On the right, there's this weird thing where they, you know, they wave the flag and love the Constitution and then ignore the fact that it's designed for inertia. You know, so that's why I love America. I think it works. You know, so notwithstanding my caution about the criminal justice system, which got me into so much trouble on social media.
Well, you know, there's an interesting phenomenon that I discuss in the book called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this or not, but, you know, it was a concept.
I was going to ask you about that next, so I'm glad you're doing it. Just go for it. Yeah.
So you know, two psychologists in the 90s, right? What happened was that there was a bank robber who went in to rob a bank, and he had learned somewhere that by rubbing lemon juice on your face, you became invisible to security cameras. And he believed this fact. So he rubs lemon juice on his face, and he goes in to rob a bank, and he robs the bank, and he walks out, and he goes and robs another one down the street. So and within an hour's period, he's robbed 2 banks, and there is his face, pure as day, on cameras, you know, and he was just utterly convinced that he was invisible to these security cameras. And so these two psychologists, I believe it's David Dunning and Justin Kruger, they saw this story. They were at Cornell University. They saw this story and it fascinated them. So they decided to kind of do this deep dive into like what would cause someone to be so certain of something so wrong, right? And so they developed over time this thing they call the Dunning-Kruger effect. And at its core, it basically suggests that the less someone knows, the more likely they are to think they know a lot about something. And conversely, the more someone truly understands a subject or a specific topic, the more they recognize its complexity and how little they actually know.
Yeah.
I like that so much. We're going to stop here and take our break, but I'll tell you, this is the experience of a lot of people that go into ministry, because the more you know about the Gospels, the more you realize you don't even know you can't even scratch the surface of God, and that can actually be a little discouraging. I'll get back to that in a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. This has been a really eye-opening experience, I think, being able to really talk about these issues that need to be addressed, need to be understood. Okay, don't just dismiss what we're talking about tonight, because philosophically, whether you agree with all of us or none of us or just one of us or no one, the fact is it will affect you. It is affecting your life whether you realize it or not. And only until we all can agree to learn how to deal with this. We talked about egregores in the first hour. Here's the biggest one right now. Let's forget about haunted dolls and paranormal crap. Let's talk about the real issue. The biggest egregore in the room is this right now, divisiveness. What are we going to do about it? Your questions when we come back here. You can call into the show 207-544-1983. That's 207-544-1983. Or you can ask your questions in the chat room all across the internet where we're simulcasting, be it Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. Don't go away. Christopher Waltz on the Facebook chat has asked a question that kind of leads into what I was about to say before we had to leave for break, and I kind of want to finish that thought and then lead into his question. But we were talking about, before we left for break, we were talking about how the more you know about something, the less you realize you actually know, and people that know very little seem to think that they know a lot, and that becomes a type of, I guess, confirmation bias, or at least a false conviction that they hold that leads to a lot of this misinformation, and maybe even right down to good old-fashioned yellow journalism, for all we know. I'm sure it has a lot to do with a lot of these things. I've been interviewed by a lot of journalists. I've been very impressed with few of them. They don't really seem to want the facts. They just want what's sensational. Oh, what was your most scary moment exercising this person or that person? It's like, there are no scary moments. It's all pastoral care. I'm going to make it as boring as I can for. There's no fear. It's pastoral care. Most of them, I hear their confession and the problem goes away. I don't even need to think about exorcism. So,
imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that, right? The sacraments actually work.
We always had a saying in the newsroom: journalists know a lot about a little and a little about a lot.
And that would be the biggest problem. That's exactly what you're talking about here, in a way. So, for pastors, it's a big issue because, when I went into seminary, one of the exercises that we had to do for a week was to, in our philosophy track, was to, well, first of all, let me preface it by saying our professor was an atheist. Teaching in the seminary, and her exercise for a week was that we all had to live the week as though we were atheists, convincing ourselves that God did not exist, and that was a extremely disturbing exercise to do for a week, and the way that it was handled, because at first I thought, well, she's just an asshole and she's just trying to push her agenda on us. And that was my initial, very immature mind assessing and judging her. And it had nothing to do with that. Her assessment was really, her whole purpose of this exercise was to get us to realize that no matter how much that we will learn here, we will never even be able to scratch the surface of what it is we're setting out to understand. Yeah. And this is why she settled on atheism, not because she necessarily doesn't believe in God, but her position, and I don't agree with this, and she was okay with that. None of us agreed with this, but her position was, since it was so unknowable, I might as well not know it and just act as though it's an irrelevancy. She's a lousy
atheist. She's not an atheist.
Well, no, I don't think there are any good atheists. Do you think there's any? Do you really think there's any atheists? I don't think so. I really don't.
No, but she's 101, not an atheist.
No.
She's chosen to devote her intellectual pursuits to training priests.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, there was something to be said for it. It did, though.
Actions speak louder than words.
It did, though, and I did like the fact that what it did is it taught me to rethink everything that I think I knew. And that was
the other.
Yeah, so that I could actually understand. And you know what? It makes me a much better pastor because now I can think outside of myself. And as a pastor, that's an essential skill. So this gets into the question that has been asked of our guest tonight. Well, I guess he's asking all of us, but he's asking me too. Christopher Waltz asked, Bishop and company, I've been watching The Chosen with my wife and can't help to notice that the Pharisees in the show remind me a lot of Christians I run into. Do you have any opinions on that? That's the first part of the question. He's got another one for you, Father Chris. Let me talk about that for a second, because, just because somebody calls themselves a Christian does not make them a Christian. And I would actually argue, I don't know how you feel about this, Jeremy, but this is what I teach. Being a Christian is not whether or not you believe in Jesus. Being a Christian is whether or not you can actually live by what Jesus instructed us to do. That's what a Christian really is. Look, the devil believes in Jesus. Father Chris always likes to say that one. The devil believes in Jesus. That doesn't make the devil a Christian, right? So believing in Jesus is nothing. What matters is whether or not you believe in him enough to actually do what he says. That's where the real test is. And so the Pharisees represent the ostentatious show and display of faith without any of the actual conviction that backs it up. And so they are the quintessential archetypal hypocrites in the Gospels. And yes, I would say that Christians, in fact, do indeed act very much like this, because they are not, and this is, I think, not a flaw in the religion as much as it is a flaw in the way the religion is practiced. And that is because it is so concerned, and rightfully so, that Christianity has to maintain the integrity of the faith so that it doesn't change and become something other than what it is, or something other than what Jesus taught or intended. The problem is that it has the nasty side effect of becoming stagnant and stationary, to the point that then people are like, well, I can't be open to anything, because if I do, that could change me. And no, you need to be mature enough to handle that, which is why I say this leads into the first part of what we were talking about with the atheist professor, or so-called atheist professors, that I could not have become a decent pastor, a decent bishop, a decent priest, a decent minister, or a decent Christian, unless I can step outside myself to actually speak to the people that I serve, because it's not about me. See, too many Christians became Christians because they made it about them. They want God in their life. Yeah. They want to go to heaven. They're afraid of hell. But Christianity is not about those things. Christianity is about who do you serve, and putting everyone ahead of yourself as Jesus did.
What have you done for your brothers and sisters?
Yeah, what have you done?
Yeah, Jesus is not a personal possession.
No, He doesn't belong to you. He's not your buddy. There's a relationship there, but it's not a trivial thing, and it's certainly not.
He's Lord.
Yeah, I'm right. Lord and God and Savior, right? Not just just whatever you want Him to be. So I argue, and Jeremy, I say on the show often, that Christians, like these Pharisees, have made an idol out of God. It's a false God that they believe in. Not the real one, not the one that the Gospels teach, not the one that teaches in the Gospel, So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get to the rest of the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's an important topic but it requires humility, and it requires some nuance. I have not seen The Chosen, so I don't know how it presents the Pharisees, but I know that in the Bible, they're very complex people. They're not presented as these cartoon villains. They're deeply religious, they're disciplined, they're sincere, most of them for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. And Jesus's strongest criticism were that is that usually they directed not at his criticisms were usually directed not at their holiness, but like at their hypocrisy, their pride, their legalism, right? And they're kind of spiritually blind,
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that a lot of Christians would fall into that category today. And I actually have a whole YouTube channel that I create content for to promote the book. And all I do is talk to Christians about, the issues that we face as Christians and how we are to deal with them. And I feel like I'm saying the same things over and over again, that we have to look at everything with humility. We have to remove our pride from everything that we want to examine. And that's the only way we can get past sort of the legalism that has crept back into our worldviews.
I have not seen The Chosen either. Jamie has.
I have I haven't seen this season. I actually think it's very, very well done, and I get what the person in the chat's talking about. They have a few complex characters that have developed really well, and they kind of struggle with Christ's teaching as a Pharisee, and then there's some that are just power hungry and want him dealt with so they don't lose power. But I suggest The Chosen for everybody.
Well, see, the problem is, and I guess
it's very well done.
My guess is, I haven't seen it, but my guess is, and I mean, certainly parts of the Gospels display it this way. The Pharisees were tasked with protecting their understanding of God, right? And Jesus was, let's face it, he was the ultimate heretic. Yeah. He challenged things that were absolutely against the norm of the religion at that time. If we had somebody who came to us now in the Christian faith, go to any denomination, but let's say he just appears on Rome's doorstep, right? And let's pretend the Vatican's like the new Jewish temple, right? If we had somebody that came and was God and started teaching things that were against the Catholic faith, I think that all these priests and bishops and cardinals would come out and have words with him that were probably very similar to what the Pharisees were saying. So the challenge here was that, and I think
they'll probably make him a bishop in Germany.
Easy.
Hey, I'd offer him the Nicolaitanian papacy if it existed. I mean, I just thought, but no, the reality is that this is a very good question for what we're overall talking about tonight, because the Pharisees also represent confidence in what they know without any willingness to be open to what they don't know. That leads to the identification with the view, and that's where it blurs the line between conviction and confrontation, I think.
Yeah.
The second part of the question is for Father Chris. Father Chris, what part of England are you from originally? I recognize your accent, but can't place it. I guess you can answer that one fairly quickly.
Yeah, mine's a bit of a nightmare, though. I'm from a town called Altrincham, which is in the historic county of Cheshire, but is now part of Greater Manchester. So, but I haven't really got a Mancunian accent. It's more Mancunian than it is anything else. But I also left when I was 18 and went to Oxford and what have you. So I don't speak like that, kid. Right. So,
that would sound wrong if you did that. If you started talking like that, we'd have to ask you to leave the show, Father. I'm sorry.
Exactly. From South Manchester, South Manchester or Northeast Cheshire, depending how you want to look at it.
Well, it's not Cockney, right? So, I mean, there you go.
Not Cockney.
I love the Cockneys.
My father-in-law's a Cockney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I love to listen to them talk.
All right. So, Moosh in the chat says, I loved when Dr. Phil would say, would you rather be a right fighter or be happy? Usually in martial situations.
Marital.
I'm sorry, marital situations. Thank you. I'm reading. Okay, marital situations.
They're related.
Yeah. I know they are. I know. It was a Freudian slip. Sorry, but it is true in many situations.
Sorry, Tracy.
Do you agree, Jeremy? You want me to read it again because I butchered it?
Yes.
Marital can turn martial very quick.
Okay, well, I'm going to get it right this time. I loved when Dr. Phil would say, would you rather be a right fighter or be happy? Usually in marital situations, but it is true in many situations. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was literally just reading an article and it said 79% of men will admit to being wrong even when they know they're right to keep their wives happy. 79%. And I showed the article to my wife and I said, look, I'm in the 21%. So.
Me too. I mean, Tracy will tell you. But, we don't really get into fights that are really fights of personality. We really don't. I mean, our arguments tend to focus more around like external issues that maybe we have different views on how to approach them. But overall, we have a very, I would say, remarkably pleasant relationship in the sense that there's a very deep understanding between the two of us. So, we have a very happy marriage of, more than a quarter of a century now. So, understanding does work. And I think that that's key in any relationship, whether it be marriage or right down to just an acquaintance that you just met or a coworker that you're stuck with. Look, a professor that you have for a semester that you can't stand. I mean, all of these things are relationships, right? And everyone's going to have views that you don't agree with or approaches to life that you don't agree with. The point is not so much to try to change them. I think a lot of people get into marriage because they think, oh, I can change that guy. And I know that a lot of women are guilty of this one. And some men are guilty of letting themselves be changed, but it only works for part the time. And then it all collapses after about, 4 or 5, 10 years. And then at this point, then they're like, why is my marriage failing? Well, it's because you created personas that are not authentic. You never really
love an idea, not a person.
Exactly. You loved an idea, not a person. Isn't that what this is the show about? People loving ideas and not people? Isn't that what this is all about?
Imagine me bringing it back to that.
I know you really reeled it in. Thank you. Because we go off on tangents if you haven't noticed.
But is it not about that fundamentally though, Jeremy, that all of these relationships depend on the context of the relationship, right? So and obviously in a marriage relationship, Dr. Phil's right. A marriage relationship is one where if you're arguing about who's right all the time, then you're stuffed, basically. I mean, you'll either stay together and be very unhappy for a very long time, or you'll destroy one another. Whereas actually, when we're having a conversation on this channel, I already know that you're happy to discuss ideas without it being personal. Right? I can tell already.
You didn't even have to read the book, right, to know that, right? Yeah.
Well, I think it goes for any relationship, not just in marriage, right? It's like, what hills are you willing to die on? You have to kind of make those decisions in the moment. I mean, I don't have this issue with my wife per se, but I do have other family members who are very strong-headed and often wrong. Yeah. And I have to like kind of hold myself back, because it's like, is it worth it for me to die on this hill to prove that I'm right and they're wrong, or do I just let acquiesce and say, okay, you won this one, have a good day.
Yeah, I can get
so
pretty.
Generally speaking, in life, the only hill worth dying on is Golgotha, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, the cross of Christ really is, if you'll forgive the pun, the crux of everything we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Because in Christ you have the most right person that could ever be, God incarnate. So if you're at war with God, you're always wrong, right? God's always right and you're always wrong, otherwise God's not God. So he's the most right, the most able to correct everybody, and he does do some correction with the fact. I'm of the school that says he probably was a Pharisee, probably of the Pharisee group, which is why he's talking to them all the time and arguing with them all the time.
Definitely educated. Jesus was definitely educated, and I don't think it was because he was God. I really think that he had to learn like everybody else.
Oh, I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah. But we've got the archetype, if you like, of the person who is the most able to correct every single person in heaven and on earth. Yeah. And yet he dies on a cross.
Yeah.
And so I mean, in Christ we have the sort of the perfect way, right? So he didn't change any of his views. The woman caught in adultery, he doesn't say, "All right, yeah, just carry on, it's fine." No one cares about that. He didn't say that at all. In other words, because he's got perfect knowledge, he doesn't change his mind on that. But the application is to take it upon himself as a sacrifice for the whole world. And so that's the hill. That's the hill that truly all of this dies on. It dies in him, and then is resurrected, and we have to figure out how to go through that journey. We go through it in baptism, but we also need to go through it with our lives and intellectually.
I mean, no.
Does the cross come into your book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole crux of the book is from a Christian perspective, sure. Right? And how to, how the impact that the gospel had on my life, and how it opened my eyes to, what it means to change minds and not change minds. So yeah, 100%, it's part of it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Jeramy, is there ever a point where conviction needs to become confrontation? And if so, what's the line that allows that to be crossed?
Well, I mean, if you look at the apostles and what they went through, and the martyrdom and that sort of thing, I mean, yeah, at some point it might come to that again, right? But if you're just arguing with someone in the comment section who's not going to change their mind, sometimes you just have to walk away and say it's not worth your time. I'm not saying you're changing your beliefs, so you're agreeing with theirs. Mm-hmm. But you're just deciding to walk away.
Shake the sand from your sandals.
Yeah,
Shake
exactly.
the dirt from your feet, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there are situations where moral conviction does change how we treat people. I mean, that I think is kind of human nature too, and I think we can only guard against that so much. I mean, some of it, I think that's the problem with the institution factor, because see, we've got this flawed human nature and we're already having a hard enough time trying to keep it in check. The last thing we need are giant, powerful institutions getting into our heads with algorithms and iPhones and social media and all the noise of the technological modern world also adding to the problem. So I don't know if we can say one is the ultimate factor. I mean, there's personal responsibility there. We got to make ourselves better, but at the same time, we are under a significant amount of duress with social media, or any media. I mean, can media, here's a question for you. Do you think media can reinvent itself to become honest again? Is that possible now?
I don't know that it's possible, especially with the rise of AI. And you as someone who says you use AI, I mean, I use AI every day in my job, and
I do as well.
It tends to agree with you, right? So no matter how many times you tell it to challenge you or to to push back, it's always going to ultimately agree with you.
It's a little sycophantic. Yeah.
That's dangerous, right? And so people are using it almost as a relationship, right? They're having conversations with AI. They are using it as a therapy session, and it gets really dangerous because it's just ultimately agreeing with everything you say versus pushing back and asking real questions.
If you argue with ChatGPT about Obama being a problematic president, it will argue to death on you on that one. Try it. Yeah. It really will. It loves Obama.
It feeds the will without challenging the conscience.
That's true. It's true. Grok, though, has a unhinged setting. If you can deal with the perverse language that it uses, it will argue everything you say.
Okay. Grok that's one I have not used.
Oh, so. Grok is something else.
Prepare yourself.
It's an interesting one.
It'll turn your cheeks red.
Yeah, you know it, right?
Yeah,
you know
it went off on me, and I'm just like, I don't even have a response.
April, do you have any questions from the chat that you've noticed that you'd like to bring to Jeramy's attention?
I have a question, and then we have another question from the chat as well.
Okay.
So my question is, what are your thoughts about individuals who feel like you're doing some kind of injustice if you don't take a stand on a certain, social issue going on or something like that?
Yeah. So my view is that Christians, especially Christians, should definitely have strong convictions. We should be able to hold these strong convictions. We should be able to believe what we believe and be passionate about what we believe. What I'm arguing for is that you don't need to share them to everyone on social media. You don't need to argue with people about them on social media. You can believe what you believe. You can, fly whatever flag you want in front of your house. You should be able to do these things. But where we need to protect ourselves and our peace is by not feeling the need to respond to every post we see as we're scrolling, right? Like, we can just keep on scrolling, and it's nothing in us is going to change. Yeah. And I think that's the key message. It's not don't have the feelings. It's not don't have these beliefs, but just pick and choose when and how you share them.
Don't connect them straight to your fingers.
Yeah.
It's kind of typical primate behavior, if you ask me. I mean, that's what monkeys do.
So unhealthy.
Are we not talking about learning what discretion is?
Yeah.
Well, it goes
discretion.
Yeah, it goes back to the conversation around the Dunning-Kruger effect too, because I see this a lot, especially in new believers, right? They've read a couple Bible books, they've attended a couple church sermons, and all of a sudden they just feel like they have this vast knowledge. But like, we live in a time, yeah. But we live in a time where Christians have access to more biblical knowledge than ever before, right? There's podcasts, there's sermons, there's YouTube, there's Bible apps, there's influencers, so we can recite verses, we can debate doctrine, we can explain theology, but like, going back to your point about believing in Jesus is not the same as following Jesus, right? Knowing the truth is not the same as obeying the truth, right? And because it's much harder to forgive someone you hurt than it is to go and post a Bible verse about forgiveness. But to actually forgive that person in your heart is the real challenge.
Well, so you really understand that too, because you devote a significant part of your book to, and Father Chris, you're going to love this. I know you haven't had a chance. I can send it to you. He sent me or you can get a copy. That's even better,
No, buy a copy.
Buy a copy. But you devote, Jeramy, a significant part of the book to an appreciation. Well, I mean, there's a significant section about your appreciation of the epistle of St. James. and how much that has impacted. Because I mean,
We love that.
a lot of Christians don't like. A lot of Christians. I mean, it's a Catholic thing. Catholics love it.
My favorite book of the Bible.
But there's not a lot of other Christians that like it outside the Catholics. So it's a lot
of.
of.
Called it the Epistle of Straw.
Yeah. Well, it's very. It very much emphasizes that faith isn't something that you believe in; it's something you do. Faith is an action. It isn't something you possess and say, "Oh, I've got it now. I'm saved." It's something that, in order to be saved, you work out. And I think James, as a book, really drives that message home. You said you were inspired by it. Any thoughts on that? And I know, April, you got a question too. I know. So there's the second part there. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, when sometimes I think we confuse consuming Christian content with spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
And the book of James is all about being a mature Christian and what it means to actually walk in the faith. And like I said, knowledge is not transforming us. Obedience does. And, one of my favorite verses in James is James 1:22, be doers of the word, not hearers only. Otherwise we deceive ourselves. Right. I mean, this verse it's an uncomfortable verse for a lot of people, but it means it's possible to know scripture and still deceive yourself into thinking you're spiritually healthy. And even Jesus says in Matthew 7 that many people will call him Lord, but their lives never reflect obedience to him.
It'll be like as if I never knew you. Yeah.
Yeah. That, to me, that's the scariest verse.
That's a very scary. It's probably the scariest verse. It is. I think you're right about that, because it really drives home that your salvation is never. You can never be so arrogant to say that you have it, because you can only know it by living it. Yeah. You can't.
Nor that you can't be saved. They're both. They are equal and opposite problems.
It's true.
I can't be saved. I am saved.
Yeah.
No, I am being saved.
It's always the process. We're always in the process of it. Yeah. And as long as you're alive, you're in that process, right? You're in that state of transition towards it. But, you neither have it or don't have it. None of us can say we have it. None of us can say we don't have it.
It's not our possession.
No, it's not.
It's a gift from God.
Yeah,
it's not our possession.
Right.
We don't own it.
Right. All right. April, I know you had another question, or I don't know if that was more to your other one, the one that you started.
The question I asked was my question. So the one from the chat is a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to ask it.
Okay.
It says, what's the best way to pray and ask God to show you what he wants of you? This person said they have stage 4 cancer for the third time, and they feel like God is looking for something from them. And it comes from Sierra.
Okay, Jeremy, why don't you start it off with what would you say to that?
Well, I kind of, the Bible tells us to pray without ceasing. And that's sort of how I live my life, is I'm always having conversations with God in my head. And for me, praying doesn't always mean you're on your knees, hands clasped, eyes closed. Your prayer life can be all kinds of different ways. And so that's how I focus on it for me. Of course I do. There are moments where I'm on my knees, praying, but I'm always kind of feeling I'm having conversations with God. And that's how I live my prayer life.
Father Chris, what would you like to say?
I think, it's the I don't want to depersonalize it. It's always personal to us when we're suffering, but
sure.
It's the age old question of theodicy. Well, it's not quite, because Kiara's not asking, how can I believe in God when I'm suffering? In fairness, it's a much more mature question than that. It's how do I pray when I'm suffering and find meaning in suffering? And I don't want to give a trite answer to that. We all suffer in different ways, but when we're suffering something as life-threatening as that, it's a different focus, and not one I've had to experience personally, although I've walked with people through it.
Jamie, you have had to face death. So how did you get yourself through it? How did your relationship with God change, and how did he speak to you in those moments when you were facing your own mortality?
Well, I think the accident that I was in, I think that was partially him trying to wake me up. So I got my scraped knee, so to speak.
Yeah.
It took a while sitting in a bed, not being able to move, being completely dependent on people I didn't know for my well-being, to realize that, I'm this big, tough police officer that's done narcotics and fugitives and kick butt and taken names. And then I realized you really are just a child and you need to talk to your father, and not my earth father, my divine father. And there were times where I would just lay there at 2:00 in the morning in the hospital, because y'all know you don't go to the hospital to sleep. And it opened up a dialogue, I think, with the divine for me, where he was showing me just how quickly things can turn. And so if I could use my pain and my experience being blessed enough to survive, that I should share that with other people who are going through the same things. And I believe it may be Sierra.
Is it Sierra or Kiara?
I believe it's Sierra.
Sierra?
But
Okay.
the American version, Sierra. But I believe that what you're going through, and my aunt's going through something very similar right now. Her cancer's come back, but she is such a devout person. She's Catholic. And, I called her to talk to her about it, because it's a scary thing. You're looking your mortality in the face through nothing you did on your own. And sometimes God will use your suffering to help someone else. There's a guy that I worked with at the police department who was diagnosed with brain cancer back in 2017. And he was a hard charger, SWAT guy, just badass dude and a good guy. And he's still with us. And they gave him 6 months to live, I think, originally. And the tumor's inoperable. But that son of a gun is out there every day, running, gunning, working out, sharing Bible verses, giving it all to God. And I can't tell you how many thousands of people who have brain cancer they go to him and they just feel so uplifted. And you can't tell me that's not God at work.
No, it is God.
I mean, eventually it's going to get him, but he's lasted almost 10 years when they gave him 6 months.
Sierra, I'd like to add...
You're being used.
I would like to add also, to give you a different perspective from, what you've probably come to expect, and, maybe even different from the rest of the panel here, is, and it may be a little bit of a tough message, but I think it's an important one, particularly as you face the challenges of mortality. And these things come to your mind, it is a call to action. You're not missing the point in that respect. Anytime we're faced with our mortality, it's definitely a call to action, because that's what life is, whether we want to accept it or not. But what this thing is, that you've heard me say it, I don't even like calling this life, because it's not life. We don't know life. Life is what's coming next. Assuming we achieve salvation. This is survival until we die. And you only get this sacred opportunity because God wants to save you. That's it. I mean, otherwise we would just perish. That's what this fallen universe is. That was the price of original sin. We die, okay? And death is all we have ever known. And it's something we all have to face. Even God himself comes here and faces it with us, not just for us, but with us. See, baptism, and the reason why, I know there was a section, in if I can reel it a little bit back into Jeramy's book, there's a section in Jeramy's book where he very briefly talks about how, Christians even get into all these ridiculous arguments about whether or not baptism is necessary for salvation, whether it isn't, whether it is, this kind of thing. Obviously, Catholics say it's essential. There are evangelicals out there that say, no, it's just a symbolic thing. The arguments become, I think, superfluous. Everyone starts missing the point after a while. But why I will say that the church does, in fact, teach that baptism is essential, because we have to participate in the death of Christ with him to really achieve and earn that salvation, because it's not just him doing it for us. It's him doing it with us. And what you're facing now in stage 4 cancer is another step in the process of your salvation being worked out. We will all have to face something of that. Some of us might get an instant death with an accident or something. Some of us might have a long, drawn-out illness. Some of us might just die in our sleep. But the fact of the matter is, we all have to face it. And we all have to come to the point where we realize that this existence is about that one moment. So in a way, it's not about whether or not you're missing something. I don't want you to feel like you're missing something. I think you're actually not. By asking the question is proving to me you're not missing it. What maybe I can help tweak some of your understanding is that this illness is your prayer. You're asking how to best pray, realizing that this illness is your prayer. This is your chance to assess your entire life and to understand that this entire existence that you have had is about preparing yourself to meet God. You know, and you're in a prime position because it's not about necessarily whether you live or die. It's about knowing that the death part's inevitable. It will either happen now or it's going to happen later, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen to all of us. But right now, in this moment, you have every infinite opportunity to draw closer to God in that moment. And the only prayer you need is to understand that and to sit with that and understand that this is God reaching you. We don't know how to listen. Look, Christians are great at uttering out a lot of words and coming out with large, complicated, prayers and everything else. Okay, they're very verbose in their prayers, but they don't know how to listen. Yeah. You need to listen, and this is Him speaking right now. And that's a prayer. Whether you're talking to God or God's talking to you, that is prayer. Both are prayer. And this is actually higher prayer. I would say it's much greater than what the church would call oratio. All right, oratio is just that normal oral prayer that everyone does. Okay, this is more of a meditative prayer. It's a chance to actually really sit with God now. All right, you're faced with the ultimate challenge. Okay, now the only thing is, are you ready to accept that?
Cancer is your cross.
Yeah. I know it's not the most pleasant answer, but it's the most helpful one. Because, see, we live our lives as if that belongs to us. This life does not belong to us. Our souls don't belong to us. This is why I laugh when people say, oh, the devil, I sold my soul to the devil, and I need you to help me get it back if you can. And it's like, you can't sell your soul to the devil. It never belonged to you. You can't sell what doesn't belong to you. It's not your possession. It belongs to God. And you can't give that away. All right. So the same thing goes with you here. Okay. This is an opportunity. This is a moment in which God is very ultimately present in ways that, a lot of people don't understand. But you're not here to live a long life. You're here to find salvation. You could, you could do that in 10 years. You could do that in 80 years. It doesn't matter. But
also, suffering has meaning. Christianity is radical in this way.
Yeah.
We believe that suffering literally led to our salvation. So we do believe that there is meaning in suffering. And the problem is we live in a very secular world where, in a sense, death is just a sort of failure. It's just as you've expired. People have passed away. I hate that euphemism. I can't tell you how much I hate that euphemism. It's ubiquitous in Australia. Everyone, he passed away. What are you talking about? I'm one who embraces death. The Christian embraces death and resurrection. Mm-hmm. We don't seek amelioration from these things. Now, that doesn't make suffering pleasant. Otherwise, it wouldn't be suffering. But there is meaning in suffering. Suffering is salvific. And look, you may well have embraced Christ and you think, gosh, well, I love Jesus and I'm living out my life, but I still suffer. Yes, that's true. It's not because you've done anything wrong. But also your suffering is a witness to other people. In fact, right now it is, because you've asked that question, and on this show, we're now telling however many people ever tune into this show, not just now, but in the years to come, that your suffering has meaning and you're bearing witness. And somebody who suffers unto death, one of the things that convinced me to embrace Catholicism was watching St. John Paul II die, because he was a man that did not believe in assisted suicide, who had all of these strong convictions of the Catholic faith, and he lived them out, and he suffered with it, and he died with it. And that's what made me take that really seriously. I thought, there is something here. This witness, and his witness was to the whole world because he was the Pope. But that didn't make his suffering any less painful. But that had great, deep meaning, and I'm partly a convert because of that witness. And so your suffering has meaning in ways that you'll never fully understand.
Well, and it can be,
and that's a grace.
And I think what Father Chris is ultimately saying is that suffering itself, if you let it, can be the only prayer that you need in a time like this. It can be.
And the best witness to your friends and family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for it.
And dealing with it with grace, other people will notice that, and you may change someone you've never, a nurse, you know. You never know who you're getting through to. That's
true. That's true. April, are there any other questions that we have not gotten to tonight? We only have a few more minutes. Did we hit them all?
Not that I have seen.
Okay, good. Did you have another one? I didn't know if we finished your question or not. I'm sorry.
I think we did, yeah.
Okay. So I do have one, maybe one or two more questions for you, Jeramy, about your worldview here, I guess we can call it. Do you think that modern society, as we exist here in the contemporary world of modernity or postmodernism, however we want to define it, do you think that we've reached a point where we've confused disagreement with moral evil, as though we treat it as though they're the same thing?
In certain cases, yes, right? So, depending on how deep you want to go, there are political and theological debates where both sides see the opposing view as evil. And the one that comes to my mind is abortion, right? Whereas as the pro choice people see people who want to regulate a woman's body as evil, and the pro life people see someone who could just so easily terminate a human life as evil. And I think there's so much nuance in those debates that that's missed but that's all we can see is black and white when it comes to kind of bigger issues like that.
Yeah, maybe it's something to be said for letting the church, guide people through those kinds of situations instead of relying on the government to do it for us. I mean, I guess there's an argument that could be said for both politically pro-life and pro-choice in that respect, because in some ways, as a libertarian, I don't want a government telling me how to practice my religion. So I certainly wouldn't want like a Muslim coming in and mandating Sharia law on my Christianity and my values. And perhaps I can see from an external point of view, I could see how a non-Christian could look at a anti-abortion campaign that is legalized into some kind of legislation as oppressive in that same sense that I would for a Sharia law. At the same time, does that make me pro-abortion to think that maybe there's something to be said for a pro-life government? Pro-choice government. I don't think so, because I do feel that we've let the government control every miserable thing that we do. And the church should be the one teaching people that abortion is a reprehensible thing. It shouldn't be the government that has to decide this. The Supreme Court shouldn't even be thinking about it. In fact, that was their position.
I'd go further. I'd go further than that.
What would you say?
I'd say, it's I think it was Cardinal Arinza was asked the question about whether America, this is years ago, whether American before Trump, or before the Trump phenomena, whether an American politician that supports abortion should be able to receive communion. And he said in his style, you're asking a cardinal from the Vatican, ask a 5-year-old child. Right. So in other words, natural law in your own conscience, if you sit on it long enough, will give you the answer.
It will. I don't want the government to have to make that decision.
But in the interest of separating ideas from personal feelings, I will say that there is a distinction to be made in the United States of America between laws shaped around Islam and laws shaped around Christianity, because the entire framing of the United States of America, I know there were deists and Masons, all the rest of it, that were the fathers. founding fathers.
Yeah.
But it's disingenuous to suggest that when they refer to God, they're not really referring to God in the most generic Christian sense of who God is. They're not referring to God as a Buddhist would, or a Hindu, or they are from the Western Christian tradition, the Scottish Enlightenment, which is, it's not Catholicism, it's not a particular brand of Protestant theology, but it's in the broadest sense the synthesis of Christianity, Reformation Christianity, and the Scottish Enlightenment. So in terms of how you weigh one against the other, they're not of equal weight when it comes to how the laws of the United States of America should be formulated. But I am separating that out from the particular issue of abortion, which I don't think you need the government to tell you it's evil and wrong.
I agree.
No, I would use a theology, and I know a lot of Catholics get upset with me when I say this, because I'm not arguing for abortion. I'm very far from it. But I will also say that I don't like how people are like, well, what does the government say? What does the Supreme Court say? Is it a life or isn't it a life? How can it make that decision? They even said they can't. It's not it's a philosophical
politics
thing.
Their religion, and therefore the Supreme
That's
Court.
the issue. That's
divine judges. And it's all.
And the
all
churches are
skewed.
complicit in this, Father, in this country. Yeah. They're complicit in making that happen because they've pushed a theocratic position on the government. It should not be there, and it really should stay with the churches.
The real issue is my daughter. One of my daughters is a midwife. Okay, and where it does become a matter for law within any jurisdiction is whether you're compelled to assist somebody. And assisting somebody even means saying, "Oh, I'll refer you to somebody else." I mean that's still in the confessional considered.
I mean, there's a lot we could take this to, and I think maybe Jeremy, if you're willing, we need to do a part 2. But I want to give you a chance to plug your channel on YouTube. Anything else? We've put your book, the link to your book, in the chat. Maybe a moderator can do it again for anybody that's been joining us in the last half hour or so. But please, the floor is yours. How can people reach you? Anything you want to promote, go for it.
Yeah, so I have a website. It's opinionated-book.com. The book is available on Amazon and a couple local Christian bookstores, but Amazon's probably the easiest way to find it. If you just search for Opinionated, Not Judgmental, it'll pop up. I have a YouTube channel, a TikTok page. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all the social media. So yeah, reach out and follow me.
If you would like, we'd love to have you back on, and we can pick up right where we left off.
I'd love to. I had a great time.
Great. Yeah, we did too. You're fantastic guests and very engaging, and we'd love to have you back on. I'll make sure to let Brandon know. If you're still listening, I know he came in a little bit late, but he's out there. I think he was out there in the chat. April, if not, make sure Brandon knows to get Jeremy back on for next season. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, I mean, I guess we're at a place where I guess we just have to pick it up, because I mean, abortion is such a complex topic. There's so much that could be said about it. And I certainly want to make sure it's clear for the audience. I am not advocating for it at all. I hate government. I hate government with a passion, and I want them out of my life in every way I possibly could get them out of my life. I
think the same goes for like gay marriage. I had this debate with people a long time ago, but it's like when the church got out of regulating marriage and handed it over to the state, what do you expect is going to happen?
Thank you. It's a sacrament, for God's sake, and then you go and you make it a legal thing. I mean, of course, that would be like giving the Eucharist, communion to the government to regulate.
That's why I don't call what we do in the church marriage anymore.
Matrimony.
I call it holy matrimony.
Yeah, that's the better way.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So what we do is holy matrimony. Yeah. What happens out there?
And honestly, as a bishop, I don't have any problem with gay unions, and I mean, if that's where your happiness is, that's what your reality is, that's fine. I'll even bless gay people. I won't bless a marriage. I can't. I don't have the authority to do that. I can't sacramentalize their marriage. I can't, because it's about also procreation, and that can't happen. But I'm not going to condemn them. I'm not going to, send them to perdition, and I'm not going to excommunicate them. I'm just going to, give them the grace of God.
I won't condemn them, or because it's not my place. It's God's place to, and He doesn't seem to want to condemn anybody, really.
No, He doesn't. I mean, He's trying to save us, right?
That's why He died on the cross. But neither will I affirm it. I think
no, it's not.
I think it is disordered.
I mean, it's no more disordered than any other. It's no more disordered than any other sin we commit.
I agree with that.
So we're all messed up in some way. Some of us are messed up in different ways. And honestly, I think there could be something said for being messed up for loving someone who maybe you shouldn't love that way than it would be for, some of the Christians that go out and judge people and condemn them to hell like Westboro Baptist Church, I think the gay people probably have a better shot at that, But, look, we're all screwed up, okay? We're all screwed up. We're all sinners. None of us are free of that, and that means none of us can judge. Jeramy, thank you so much for your conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
We'll have you on next time for sure. April, thank you. Father Chris, thank you. Jamie, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Moosh and Paula and Tracy and all of you out there in the chat, moderators. We love each and every one of you, and we thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. Next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we return with open lines, open topics. So start drafting your questions now.
Anything and everything.
Anything and everything. No topic is off limits, and you can ask us anything you want. The most offensive crap, go for it. I'm not going to get upset. You might get upset with my answer, but I'm not going to get upset at your question. I can promise you that. I kind of learned the lesson of Jeramy's book probably about the same time you did, Jeramy, I think. But anyway, until then, I'll see you all out there in the ether. God bless everyone.
Take care, everybody.